I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you would have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
When I heard Senator Ziono's description as the recap, it really hit me how far Star Wars had come, because it mentioned the star whales and the star maps and the Jedi and the false Jedi and a lot of stuff we'd never seen before. And it made me think about how much this Ahsoka show had struck to the mystical core of the original trilogy. And then I was in for a huge treat when I got to see the rest of Part 8. On the 15th anniversary of the premiere of Star Wars The Clone Wars, on the 9th anniversary of the premiere of Rebels, Dave Filoni decided to give us Star Wars viewers a present. And that present was Ezra coming home. He left us with a lot to wrestle with in the episode. You have tumultuous emotions, and there's a ton to think about and speculate on. But I have to say, I am satiated. All season, I've said I've been taking a glass half full approach as we've gotten closer to the finale. And I have to say, I'm satisfied with the season and where it went. Every Star Wars show, I often find myself wanting more after the finale. This one, I am satisfied. And, you know, some may not be satisfied with the loose ends, but come on, guys. We know where we're going, and we know we're about to be getting a lot more Star Wars out of this. Now, that's not to say that I don't have some criticisms of the episode and of the season, and we're going to dive into those. We're not yes men here at Star Wars Station. This episode did have some missteps. I can't say the finale is perfect, and there's more that could have been done here or there, but it's given me enough to chew on, and I've spent the whole day thinking about it, chewing on it, and I'm not wanting for more right at this moment. If you're new to this program, my name is Carter. This is the Star Wars Station Communication, and I'm excited to start addressing all of these plot lines in this episode and for years to come, because the setup from Ahsoka Season 1 is so exciting. I don't think I've been this hopeful for the future of Star Wars since 2015. But I'm not the only hopeful one here, and I'm not the only person here who the finale resonated with. Because also here to break down the Ahsoka finale with me is the shambling stormtrooper himself, Colin Archer.
Man, you really said it. So many open possibilities. And for some characters, they had mere moments of screen time here that and I'm excited for everything. And the delivery was done so well. We have a lot to talk about here. This one, again, we say this every week, it seems like. But this one's going to be a doozy, right?
Right. You're right about that. Let's hop right into our rapid reactions, Colin. We don't want to take any time.
Right.
He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy.
That was a titanic finale, and if you are any level of Star Wars fan, then your emotions are in turmoil right now, and Dave Filoni has once again pulled on your heartstrings.
And in major ways that are almost undescribable. I mean, it really is. Can we even do this rapid reaction justice without watching the episode again? Seriously.
It's so difficult. Every frame has something to be discussed. Every frame has references to past productions, references to books, references to the greater Star Wars universe. This deepens the world building, and it has massively impactful character moments. For some characters that we've spent 15 years with, some characters we've spent even longer with, and every single moment makes you want to pause and think about it in a way that I haven't felt like with Star Wars in a very long time.
Yeah, it really is unprecedented for a lot of people, and from so many different aspects. I mean, the Star Wars galaxy is changed, and there's so many doors are open, so many possibilities. Where do we even start, Carter? I don't have any idea. I really don't.
I mean, this this episode left us with so many hanging threads, and it left us with so many moments and setups for future events, but it didn't feel like a setup episode. It didn't feel like, oh, this was not the ultimate goal. This feels like a success from where Rebels left us on Season 4. Like, this is truly the Season 5 to Rebels, as people have said. This is truly the wrap to Rebels this season, as people have said. And now we're getting something wholly new on the horizon. And it's staggering and exciting, and it's hard to put into words how much this episode is going to need to be grappled with. I think, we're going to record our regular episode tomorrow around 24 hours after we do this rapid reaction. And I don't even think we're going to have scratched the surface of what this episode means for the galaxy, for Star Wars, and our universe, for the future of Star Wars, for the future of these characters, for the implications on all of the story of Star Wars. It's truly a generational defining episode of this show, of this product, of this property, of this beloved masterpiece of George Lucas's.
And it can't be understated in the slightest. I mean, what all we'd have here, at the tip of the top, Thrawn is back in the regular galaxy, but so is Ezra. Ahsoka's left back there. And then the Night Sister, Return of the Night Sisters. Let's do an episode just on that and what the implications of that are. My goodness gracious, man.
The return of them in a big way. We have, again, newly minted Jedi Sabine demonstrating her use of the Force, her connection to the Force. We have, from 3-second clips of Baylan and Shin, both massive setups for the future. And it's not an understatement to say that I am so interested and even saddened even more by the passing of Ray Stevenson now that this plot thread is hanging here. And I don't envy Dave Filoni or Lucasfilm on trying to do this character and do Ray Stevenson justice because of his amazing performances throughout the season, culminating to just a few seconds clip being one of the most impactful parts of the episode.
Yeah, a few seconds. And this is going to drive people wild, probably for more than a year. It really is. It's just the speculations and then everything else. I mean, Sabine using the Force, Mandalorian Jedi have to be the most OP Jedi there is. It's really crazy how cool. And we weren't even expecting this, right? If we were like gambling odds on if she's going to pull out some Force power stunts, I would have lost, in a major way. But here we are. It's really cool.
We got bona fide undead on the Star Wars live action screen. I mean, we have jumped in a big way away from where Star Wars originated, and that's not a bad thing, but it is, for general audiences, this is a big step in a direction that we as Star Wars animation fans have been experiencing, and we as Star Wars literature fans have been experiencing for decades. And now, general audience Star Wars fans have been exposed to these concepts.
Yeah, it's almost like a what if this or what if that, and come to, how did Thrawn put it? I'm going to butcher the quote. A frightening reality.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a frightening. It's what was once a dream has now become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us. First live action Thrawn line ever, and you know what? It captures the essence of that character. The fear that them succeeding in their plan and that Star Destroyer hanging above Dathomir instills in myself and I presume other hardcore Star Wars fans is pretty amazing. Given we know the future of the galaxy, we know what is beyond this timeline, and it still feels beyond this time period, and it still feels so impactful.
It really does. It's actually really harrowing. I mean, just harkening back to some of the books that we always talk about, and really the options, so many options are on the table. Gosh, it's going to be fun to speculate about this. It really is.
It is. And, I'm already tempted. We're already a minute and a half beyond where we're supposed to be, and it's so tempting to dive right in, but you're right, we've got to wait. And so, Colin, we're gonna hop into our regular meat of our podcast right now. All right, so those were our raw, unfiltered, rapid reactions. Sometimes I'll hear the rapid reactions 24 hours later, and I don't always agree with myself. Sometimes I'll see myself, there's a little bit of recency bias there. But I've been able to sit with this episode and chew on it, and I do agree with myself pretty much throughout those rapid reactions. I think we're going to look back in 10 years or 10 years from now, when Star Wars has gone through however many TV shows, however many movies, however many books and comics have gone by, and we're going to look back and we're going to be able to point to Ahsoka and say, here was the framework where all of these future projects springboarded from. I mean, I'm talking not just Ahsoka Season 2 and Dave's movie, but I think that the Rey movie, and I think that Dawn of the Jedi and Mando Season 4, and just pretty much every coming project is going to be drawing on this for some kind of source material.
Right, it really is, especially like from Thrawn's perspective. Like the most we have is from a kids' TV show and some books. And the books are really high-minded in a sense. They're really fun. They take place in an alternate dimension, you could say at this point. But, we have highlighted over the past 7 episodes how this crosses over into that literary past. And now we get to see the meat of it come to fruition, heir to the Empire, all this and that, and everything in between. You talk about a Filoni movie, and a lot of people harken it to some Avengers. There's every opportunity for our favorite characters to make appearances. Luke, Leia, Han, everybody. And like this is truly uncharted territory that I'll even go out on a limb to say that so many fans really, really want, right? Mm-hmm, I mean, and we're fixing to get that. We're on the precipice. We're Balin Skull standing on the fingertip and looking at the future very bright ahead.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you completely. So, Colin, you've rewatched the episode. I rewatched it twice since the initial watch. Since the rapid reactions, I think I might have found a few more tiny cracks, and we're going to pick those nits. That's our job. We got to find the flaws because we aren't yes men, but we're going to talk about how titanic this episode was. And I am going to stand by the fact that this was a truly great episode. It wrapped up Rebels. This was the ultimate Rebels finale, and I think that's why I have such a sense of peace about the cliffhangers, because despite all the unanswered questions, despite the unsure future of where this show is going to be going, not the unsure future of production, if anyone tells you that they're not making a season 2, they're trying to get clicks. They're trying to get interactions. They're trying to get paid on their blue check Twitter, because there's going to be a season 2, guys. I mean, that's just ridiculous to say there isn't. But despite all of that, despite the lack of a note of finality, there was a note of finality for me, and it's because Ezra made it home. Ezra returning to the Star Wars galaxy tied this show up in a bow for me, regardless of cliffhangers, regardless of plot threads. We've been waiting years to see where's Ezra. There's hashtag where is Ezra, and now we know Ezra made it home. And that was, as a Rebels fan, as Rebels being one of the biggest and most important pieces of Star Wars for me, that satisfied me the most, was knowing that Ezra Bridger has made it back to the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, it's monumental. It really is. And think of the possibilities. We're going to talk a lot about all this stuff when we speculate in our segment for that. But, gosh, you said it so well with, I'm sorry, there's so much going through my brain here. It's melting it. Nitpicks. Yes, there's going to be this and that here and there, but so is with everything, right? I mean, these end up being real minor things. We're going to talk about those. We had a good discussion, lining some things out, getting everything set on the same page. And cliffhangers, oh yeah, that's where my brain was going. So, we've already alluded to a little bit, but this is going to be a new era, I think. And it's going to be this split story that I think coalesces back around on the other side, right? And I mean, because we all love Ahsoka so much, we all love Sabine so much, and there's this huge crying shame that Ray Stevenson isn't around to get all the praise that he deserves.
I know.
I mean, it's a crime almost.
He could have won an award for this series. I'm
Yes.
serious. I mean, honest, I don't know how they give posthumous awards. I don't really know how that works. But if there is posthumous nominations, he deserves a posthumous nomination for whatever awards this show might receive.
Well, and then, we could do a character study on Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati as right alongside with it, right? And all it is an enigma wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a riddle, right?
Right.
And so, I can't envision a future where these questions aren't answered on some level. And with Ray Stevens' performance, we deserve it on film, one way or another, television or movie. We shouldn't be relegated to a comic book or an author's vision. It needs to be this is another Filoni character, and we've seen how this has gone. At least we can assume that. Whoever came up with this guy's idea, they haven't told us. But and if what I said was just true, we have Ahsoka's story to worry about. We have Ezra's story. We have Sabine's story and Thrawn's story. There's him showing back up in the galaxy is going to be a major point of turmoil.
Yeah,
that has to be explored.
Right, and we're going to hit all of that in our speculations, but we got to get down to the meat of this breakdown right here because it's a long one. We got pages and pages of notes between the two of us on this, and so. Top of it, written by Dave Filoni. No surprise there. Obviously, he wrote every episode of this. These are his babies. These are his creations, and wouldn't have wanted anybody else to steward us along on this trip. Directed by Rick Famuyiwa, and it's time that they gave him his own series to direct. I think because they bring him in. And he hits home runs every time. We recorded one of our ARC Trooper podcasts recently over there on Patreon, and we talked about The Believer, the episode of The Mandalorian that is my personal favorite, and it was your favorite arc. The Believer's in the middle of those 2 episodes of your 3-episode arc, and Rick Famuyiwa directed that episode, and he's directed tons of other gems in live-action Star Wars TV that it's just time to give him something. Give him his own thing.
Yeah, I mean, when your batting average is that high, your baseball card's worth a lot of money, right?
Yeah. right.
So, I mean, this is a no-brainer at this point that let's give this guy a budget.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mentioned in the opening that Senator Ziono's lines score the recap. I try to watch those recaps every time, even though I remember it. It really gives you a good frame of what this episode's going to be about, what you need to really be thinking about and chewing on while you watch this episode. And so I don't know why it didn't occur to me in Part 7 that Senator Ziono's lines were going to be used in the recap, because it was very clear that was going to happen, and it was a good job because it served as a great summary of what's happened so far. Yeah. Star Whales and star maps, and the way they matched it up looked really good.
Yeah, it did. I really love the previews, watch them every time. And the scope of this thing is really, it has 3 different settings. It's whatever the main goings on, whatever Ahsoka's doing. And it's got the New Republic and their chicanery. And it's got Thrawn and his doing in another galaxy. And so the recaps always, especially in the last couple of episodes, that with Hera at the start, you almost forgot by the end of it. You forgot that even occurred.
Yeah, you're right. So we open the actual episode with some drum beats, and then we get the Chimera sitting over the fortress, and we have Thrawn talking to Enoch about how the transfer is complete. They finished bringing their boxes on board, and now he wants him to bring the Eye of Sion out of orbit so they can begin the interlocking. And so this confirms the hyperspace ring. I still all the way up until this episode, saw people saying, well, that's not a hyperspace ring. It's got to be something else. It's like, what do you mean? It's a Star Destroyer-sized ring.
Yeah.
What else were they going to do with it?
You've seen this since Attack of the Clones. Give me a break, man.
I know. I was surprised that some people still were fighting the fact that it was a hyperspace ring.
That's crazy.
Morgan Elspeth gives this, like, she gives a lot of these kind of lines where it's like, cartoon bad guy, like, they'll never stop us now. And so she says...
She's Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle, right?
Yes. She says, there is little the Jedi can do to stop us now. And so Thrawn has to correct her once again, like he does in this whole show.
And I love this. Can I say this quote? Yeah, I love this part. I mean, and really, this is such a pivotal point. And I have a bigger point to make about all this. But he says, I've watched many an Imperial officer make the same assumption about the rebellion. Even I fell victim to the same heroics of a single Jedi. Never again. So Thrawn has leveled up.
Yep.
He really has.
You know, he's referring to these assumptions about the rebellion. Thrawn doesn't know about anything that happened past when Ezra took him. So he doesn't know about the Battle of Yavin, Hoth, Endor, any of that. Presumably he's been brought up to speed now.
But not the details.
He's not referring to that. And so when he says this, you know, you as an audience member, you can be like, you know, same thing as Tarkin. Tarkin sits on that Death Star, leave in our moment of triumph, and he gets blown to bits by Luke Skywalker.
A farm boy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because he underestimated the rebellion, and they had the help of a Jedi there. And Thrawn seems a little, I mean, not a little. Thrawn, I think, is pretty upset about having been bested by a Jedi, especially a child. I mean, Ezra's still a kid. We saw in Rebels, Thrawn can get pretty angry. He doesn't show it here, but in Rebels, there's particularly one scene I'm thinking of. He grabs an Imperial officer by the shirt and like growls at him, kind of fairly like an animal. Then he puts him down and he goes, you know, I forgot that not everyone appreciates art as I do. And so I think that we saw in this episode Thrawn lose his composure a couple times, facially, and we saw it last episode too at the mention of Anakin Skywalker. But the important thing, I think, to take from that never again line is Thrawn is uniquely a character that often learns from his own mistakes. And he makes corrections, and he understands how to limit his oversights. And so we see him do this over and over in the novels, in the EU novels, in the canon novels, in Rebels. And so we have to assume that this never again is serious. He means it's obviously going to happen again, but he really thinks it's not, and he's probably going to have some precautions set up to stop how his first defeat came about.
Yes, and gosh, there's so much to get into with this, and speculation wise, and whatever else. But I mean, going to the past, it was a child Jedi with the help of the Purgils sent to the galaxy in exile for 10 plus years. And I mean, and seemingly almost like, I mean, he was crippled, not literally, not physically, but his ship was, and his capabilities was. I mean, and while he was there, everything that he'd worked for crumbled away into nothingness. And so, you know, even as the character progresses, just in these, you know, long live the Empire and all that stuff, it makes me wonder, what are his motivations? You know, he got exiled over here, and the Empire's quote unquote gone. And so, what is he going to accomplish? Why is he so married to this idea? I mean, like, you know, for like some warlord who's going to show up in this other galaxy, and it's like, all right, you're guilty of all these atrocities, and you're going to be put to death. Well, then, yeah, you're probably going to stick to your guns if what you're facing is. But like, you know, why not hope for some sort of Operation Paperclip where you get snatched up and, hey, you're this high-minded military leader and you can use my abilities over here, you know? And, well, that's not the philosophy of the Republic anymore.
Right.
So.
And I can also only understand that Thrawn, I think, sees an inherent weakness in the Rebellion and in the Republic. And he just believes in this tyrannical hand of the Empire. He's, you know, I mean, long live the Empire. Thrawn's a true believer in this kind of thing. And so he is definitely a will to power kind of guy.
Well, and I'm just wondering, we can speculate about it later, if he knows something greater that requires the organization.
There's a line that gives that gives that away that we will definitely talk about. So the Great Mothers thank Morgan Elsbeth, the one who heard their calls in her dreams, and they bestow upon her the gift of shadows.
Yes.
We don't really know exactly what that is, but we know that it augmented her abilities and gave her the stark black eyes like the rest of the Great Mothers.
Yeah, she had to change her LinkedIn profile picture.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and so here again is another character who's powered up. This is like, you could call this the Super Saiyan episode too.
Right. And she's not just rewarded with that, she's rewarded with the Blade of Talzin.
Wasn't that a cool sword?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I'd seen it floating around online. I did not realize that we did see... So, Colin, explain real quick who Mother Talzin is for our listeners who may have not watched the Clone Wars.
So, Mother Talzin of the Dathomiri witches is basically the leader of their clan.
In the Star Wars galaxy.
In the Star Wars galaxy. And, I mean, it's not... From the knowledge of this episode, it's not a far stretch to say that she's either a descendant or an immigrant from this galaxy that Thrawn and Ahsoka are currently in, and that she, or at the very least, she's the shepherd of the witches from this other galaxy to exact their abilities in the current Star Wars galaxy.
Right.
And so she is very successful at it. You know, all of this the witches, all of their abilities are Force abilities. It's you could describe it as a flip side to a coin of the Force or something like that. And you know, it's mostly signified by the green fire. We've talked about that. It's been a recurring theme in a lot of all this. There's some really fun elements of this episode where you get to see that.
Yeah.
But they, you know, a lot of people sleep on the Dathomiri. They really do.
Yeah.
And there's more in this episode that we can continue this discussion on a lot.
Well, we have, you know, from some canon media, we have the Dathomiri witch's power is tied to Dathomir, and so they're a little weaker off planet. And they are dark side users, but they're not driven by conquest like the Sith. The Sith want to control the galaxy. These witches are driven by a more, for lack of a better word, fraternal like sense among their sisters and the preservation of their clan. They're survivors. And so we see... So my one question about Mother Talzin first, before we start talking about the blade, is do you think that she is a great mother? Do you think she is these women's equal?
I would believe so.
I think so too.
And
she's got the same white face and the markings and the black eyes.
Yeah, and like I said, she's a shepherd of the Dathomiri, the not witches, not sisters, in the main Star Wars galaxy. Like I said, either a descendant or an original, whatever. And there's no doubt with her power and capabilities, even after death. Yeah.
So we get this Blade of Talzin, which it materializes out of nothing. The Great Mothers bring it out of thin air, and it's kind of interesting because we see Talzin actually use a sword in one of the Night Sisters episodes, and she fights Mace Windu with it. She locks blades with Mace Windu with a sword, and it looks pretty much the same. They're not identical, but it's the same scimitar-ish blade, or the short blade, not the exact same pommel, but it looks very similar. So my question about the Blade of Talzin is, do you think that this is literally Mother Talzin's blade, or maybe Mother Talzin is named after the blade, or maybe Talzin is some figure in their history?
Yeah. So I actually thought a lot about this, and what I want to posit is that Talzin is kind of like a sect or an order or a house, if you will. That is, the Talzin power or the Talzin dynasty or something is what immigrated to this other galaxy.
Okay.
And was
they're like the Talzin Night Sisters are the ones that are in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll say that.
Because Morgan Elsbeth came from the Star Wars galaxy.
Exactly right. And so she would be somehow connected to the Talzin dynasty, if you will. And so this blade is a representation, like a physical manifestation that would be like the wielding of the authority or power of the Talzin. She Morgan Elsbeth is the physical embodiment and persona of the Talzin, which these Great Mothers are not.
She's the new Mother Talzin, although she's not possessed by the old one. She's not the same person as the old one. It's like a title. I mean, it's like, if in a real world situation wherein a king dies and you become the new king, she becomes the new Mother Talzin. She's the new pope of the Night Sisters.
She inherited the dynasty. And so this this the sword is like a talisman of office or a rod of office or something like that. And this is a very culturally relevant thing, and it's across like I can't think of anything from modern times, but I've heard it. It's a lot in fiction, right? But
you have the. I think in England specifically, they have a scepter that they pass through their leaders.
Right.
And it's
just
similar.
stuff like that. But in the Star Wars galaxy, this thing has actual power and abilities.
Right. I think there's a lot of theories, and I like yours. I like yours a lot. That one is new to me too, so I like that one. I was gravitating towards this is just Mother Talzin's sword, the same one that materialized, but now I'm leaning more towards your thing, so that's good. So then we get, after this whole ceremony and Elsbeth's grateful, we get Thrawn just watching. Thrawn is not a guy. We have this information from the Heir to the Empire novels, but it's reinforced by the canon novels as well. Thrawn's got two weaknesses, and he solves them both. He solved the other one way before we saw him in Rebels, and that's Thrawn doesn't really get politics. Like, he's good at military and tactics, but he doesn't understand the gaming of other people and interactions. And he fixes that in the books, and then he doesn't get the Force. That's his weak spot. He's a man of science and tactics and technology, and he's thwarted by the Force. In every iteration of Thrawn, he is thwarted by the Force. Well, now he's harnessed the Force through these witches. He now has this capability himself. Obviously, he can't wield it, but they are, so far, at the end of this season, subservient to him. We don't know what'll happen eventually now that they're back in the Star Wars galaxy, but for now, they're subservient to him. And so you get this shot of Thrawn watching this ceremony, and then you have the ties unlock, and they fly by him with the screaming sound. It's a great shot, and what I really liked about it is it actually really juxtaposes the two kinds of evil in Star Wars. Because you have Thrawn, who represents the tyranny, the everyday oppression of the people of the galaxy. And then you have the dark side, through the witches. This, this ultimate evil that is just a darkness and an evil, and it always exists, and it is a counter to the light. And so you have the mysticism of Star Wars and the Jedi's conflict, and you also have that same conflict that we see in Andor, where it's just regular people standing up against the Empire. And this shot right here shows us both. You watch this crazy, mystical, witchy ceremony, and then you get this technological terror screaming at you on the screen.
Yeah, very good points. I love that, hearing those TIE fighters power up and start get after it. Very cool.
So we cut to title screen, some exciting music, and we get a pretty stellar title.
Yes.
Obviously, homage to C.S. Lewis, reference to Dave Filoni's many inspirations, one of which is C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan myself. All of his writings are great. This was 10 out of 10. Loved it. So the title is The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. Obviously, that is an homage to the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes. Yeah. I've never read the books. Obviously, watched the movies several times. That's something I need to do, is go back and read those books. I think, to understand the full gravitas of. But we can assume a little bit. This other galaxy's Narnia for sure.
Yeah. Peridia is Narnia. You're absolutely right. And so I was really happy to get to see that. So then we cut to our heroes. We cut to the Jedi shuttle hovering above the Noti, and I'm immediately like, what are they doing? They're just going real slow across the plains. Like, they got a mission they need to be on.
Yeah.
And then we immediately get the answer, and Ezra's like, as soon as we're done, he's building his lightsaber, and he's, as soon as we're done, we're gonna go. Not super satisfying to me. Maybe have built that en route. Like, I didn't. That was maybe one of my small nitpicks. Is like, they're just hovering above this wagon train, and they need to be on the move. And last episode, he's talking about how he doesn't need a lightsaber.
Yeah. That's a very small nitpick. Obviously, the answer is they wanted to set up this master relationship dialogue between, and parallel it between Kanan Jarrus and Ezra and Ahsoka and Sabine.
Yeah.
Right? Plus, wasn't that scene really cool?
Oh, I'm very happy we got the scene. My only nitpick is like, come on, do it in transit. Like, you need to be getting going.
I mean, this is the slice of life thing. There's that little discussion. The blade emitter's too narrow, and I read some comments online that was like some sort of inside joke to Rebels. The The lightsaber blades looked really narrow.
Yeah. No, I thought it was super funny.
But,
the whole scene had a lot going on. Like, we've got a lot to talk about in this scene.
Yeah, we really do.
Ezra, I said last episode, I think you may have asked, or I might have just said, and we had some discussion in our Discord where this was brought up, is Ezra going to build a new lightsaber? Well, if you would have said, is Ezra going to build a new lightsaber in the next episode, I would have been like, no, because it's one episode. So I would have been wrong there. But I did say he was going to build a new lightsaber for the toy value. I was like,
yes.
they're going to have to do it because they're not going to be able to market an Ezra action figure without a lightsaber. And so we got the new lightsaber. And Ezra's working with Hu Yang. Hu Yang is trained and worked with most every Jedi that's ever come through the Order. And Ezra is sitting here also now working with Hu Yang. So Ezra's really getting... Ezra's already a Jedi. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but it really feels like a kind of rite of passage to build your lightsaber with Hu Yang. And so Ezra's becoming even more one with the old Jedi Order. Like, we're seeing the torch being passed even more to him. And this is evident through the Kanan Jarrus mention when Hu Yang is like, who is your master? And then they tell him, and he's like, oh, I knew Kanan Jarrus. And he refers to him as Caleb because...
Caleb Doom, yep.
As if you didn't watch Rebels, you may not know that Kanan went by Caleb before Order 66. He changed his name after the Purge because he didn't want to get found out. Why would you... Obi-Wan goes by Ben. I mean, you got to have an alias. And so he is telling Sabine and Ezra about Kanan. And it's really endearing to hear them learn about Kanan as a Padawan. We've gotten to see Kanan as a Padawan twice now. We got to see it in the Bad Batch's series premiere, and we got to see it in a flash of a Tales of the Jedi episode. And they talk about Kanan's shyness, or Hu Yang mentions his shyness. I actually think, from what I remember, I didn't go back and watch that Tales of the Jedi episode, but I think we kind of see that in the background, and so I just thought that was a really neat... Kanan's a very fleshed out character. Like, Dave fleshes his characters out. He knows their life story backwards and forwards, whether we do or not, and I was really happy to see just this little flavor added to Kanan.
Yeah, so cool. And Hu Yang finds that he's like, I made 2 of these emitter parts, or I have 2 of these emitter parts, and Kanan used the last one, and you get this other one. Mm-hmm. Very cool. This master Padawan relationship, and like just like a nostalgia effect almost, and then just seeing his whole shop on that shuttle.
Oh, I know, man. Wouldn't it be cool? That's like that. I mean, it's like the shop at Disney, but way better, right?
It is. Well, I mean, it really is. I mean, they have the little drawers and stuff like that. But, last time we saw something similar, it was on like a cruiser style ship where Hu Yang was with Yoda and a bunch of younglings, including, was Ahsoka there? She was like,
Ahsoka was the one guiding them. Yeah.
And I guess something similar was on there because they found their crystals on Ilum, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go back to the ship and start putting together their lightsabers under Hu Yang's guidance.
Right.
And so those are really good little episodes. They're little insightful episodes back in the Clone Wars. I mean, because Clone Wars, this is where younglings are going around, right? It's not a war going on except kind of locally, right?
Well, yeah, there is a war, but the Order hasn't fallen. I mean, the Order still has to be as much business as usual as possible. They may be rushing Padawans to knighthood, and they're fighting this war, but it's still the Jedi Order. There's still the semblance. There are masters walking around the temple meditating. Like, they're trying to maintain what they've had for 1,000 years.
But seeing this continuity of Hu Yang and his purpose is very cool.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like Hu Yang is the biggest instantiation of what the old Jedi Order was, more than Ahsoka could possibly be. Even though she was a part of the Order, she was still a Padawan. She never became a knight in the Order. Kanan the same way. Cal Kestis the same way. It's like Hu Yang is the only real vestige of the Order, because at this point Yoda is dead. Before that, Yoda was in exile anyways. And so Hu Yang is really the torch that's carrying this Jedi Order. And as you had mentioned with the younglings during the Clone Wars, it's like the keep calm and carry on sign that the British used during World War II. It's like you must keep living your regular life during this tumultuous war. Well, I almost feel like that's how Hu Yang has been living his life since the fall of the Order. So he's just still trying to maintain what he can about the Jedi Order.
So given all that, why isn't Hu Yang palling around with Luke Skywalker?
I know, and that's a big question mark that needs to get answered. And now the answer is clearly, well, he's in another galaxy now. But before that, we know Ahsoka sat down with him. So did Ahsoka meet Hu Yang after she sat down with Luke? Because that's kind of a tight timeline. I really would like to know that, though. We've got to get something that explains how Ahsoka and Hu Yang connected.
Yeah, we're thirsty for that for sure.
So Ezra, upon learning that he knew Kanan and taught virtually every Jedi, he says, "How old are you?" And then Hu Yang says, "Old enough to know that the relationship between a master and apprentice is as difficult as it is meaningful." And this is foreshadowing something for the end of this episode and almost really the message of the season. And it's something that I want to get into a little bit later. So when he fixes Kanan's blade emitter on there, we see blue lightsaber pop out. I was happy to see the blue. I would have been happy to see any color. I realized in the back of my mind I was kind of rooting for purple because Ezra is in Mace Windu's Padawan lineage. Right. It's Mace Windu, Depa Billaba, Kanan, Ezra. And so I was really hoping that it was going to be purple, but I was happy to see the blue anyway. I've seen some people complaining online about where the Kyber came from.
Oh, gosh. I think that's easily answered. You know, Hu Yang has to have those things just sitting around.
Sure. Well, I think there's plenty of he could have them sitting around. It could be Kanan's old crystal, or who cares because you didn't ask where Luke's crystal came from in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Like, we know where Luke's crystal came from, but it was in a deleted scene. George took it out of the movie. And so it's not really like this pressing issue. Like, just move along.
I mean, we all want something special, right? We want this pilgrimage to Ilum to go find your crystal. Mm-hmm. We want it to call out to you from the darkness, right? And so, the Sith, all their crystals are synthetic.
No,
right?
Not anymore. That's the old expanded universe.
Old expanded universe.
Now,
okay. Well, what about Kylo Ren?
All of the crystals are corrupted.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually don't know about Kylo's though. His might have to be synthetic because the crackling. There is an answer. I just don't remember
something from that book that we read, Rise of the Red Blade, or something.
That one was corrupted. All the red lightsabers had to be corrupted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, it's not just some cut and dry thing that you have to go on. You're not the chosen ones sitting in the wand shop and you get your cool ass little thing there.
Right. It's not. It chooses you like the Kyber crystal on Ilum, but not for dark side users.
And I will say, it probably does. You probably have some sort of. You get +1 to your rolls or something if you have your chosen crystal. You know?
Well, and we know that Ahsoka does not have her chosen crystals, so she loses both of her lightsabers after the Siege of Mandalore, and Vader picks them up. And when he goes and looks, it's the epilogue to the Clone Wars. Ahsoka gets hers after she kills that Inquisitor in Tales of the Jedi, because the only way to get a white crystal is to uncorrupt a red crystal. If you uncorrupt a red crystal, it becomes white.
Very cool. I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It was in the Ahsoka novel. That has much of that has become retconned, but that part.
Well, and it was also in these
regular
animations that had come out. The different studios put them out.
Visions.
I
don't remember that.
It was one of the last little things. The whole planet is of corrupted red crystals.
Oh yeah,
and the
song.
And the kid sings
yes,
and uncorrupts them.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So the next thing I notice about Ezra, so they see Sabine has left, and Ezra is asking, what's wrong. But before he asks what's wrong, they do this big headshot on Ezra, and Colin, I hate the contacts. They look so bad. I get it that Ezra's eyes were blue in Rebels, and they were cartoonishly blue in Rebels, which is fine because it's a cartoon. But can we not just say... Here's your brown eyes. So we have Saw Gerrera, who in animation has had 2 different eye colors, blue and green. And then we have Forrest Whitaker, whose eyes are not blue or green. And they didn't give him contacts. And when you see him in Rebels, or when you see him in Andor, and you see him in Rogue One, he is such a great actor that his eyes are communicating a bunch through his acting, and they look good because they're not obstructed by contacts. So for season 2 of Ahsoka, can we just drop the contacts for Ezra? Now for Hera, I kind of get it, but that's because she's an alien, so it's meant to look foreign. For Ezra, he's a human. Just give him his regular eyes, man.
Maybe it has something to do with him being in the other galaxy.
Maybe. So Ezra asks what happens between Ahsoka and Sabine, And then,
oh god, these are such good lines, weren't they?
This was really important. I mean, this is some information that we've been wanting since episode 1 because we've learned of this rift. And so Hu Yang answers, and he says, Ahsoka became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore. So then Ezra says, well, what happened on Mandalore? Because obviously he doesn't know. And we get explained what the Night of 1,000 Tears was, that Sabine's family perished in the Night of 1,000 Tears, that appears in the Book of Boba Fett and is mentioned in Mandalorian Season 2 and 3. And the big part that made me go, wow, really? Is that we learned that it happened after the war, so after the Battle of Endor, and that means it must have been part of Operation Cinder.
Right.
That the Night of 1,000 Tears is directly part of Operation Cinder, which is, as you know, Colin, and as probably most of our listeners know, appears in the Battlefront 2 video games, appears in a bunch of comic books, and in the Aftermath trilogy, and this was the Emperor exacting his revenge on the galaxy after his death, and it's just all of these calamities on different planets. Loyal planets, rebellious planets, neutral planets. He's just... Basically, they seem chosen at random.
And for Mandalore specifically at the hand of Moff Gideon.
Yes, exactly. So then Hu Yang says, Ahsoka felt that if Sabine unlocked her full potential, she would become dangerous. And we know that before Part 5 of this show, that was something Ahsoka is very blaster shy of, is that someone becoming corrupted by the dark side, because she knows what happened to her own master and how he fell to the dark side. And so she was pretty nervous about this, understandably so, and so she's worried about was worried about the potential for Sabine to fall to the dark side. And honestly, Sabine's pretty aggressive. All Mandalorians are pretty aggressive and really, kind of brutish. Not brutish, that's the wrong term, but a little overbearing. And so I can kind of understand where she would get that.
Yeah, especially without, she's Sabine. She's a loner. She doesn't fit in with many other Mandalorians. And what do we know of these other Mandalorians that are in the galaxy that exist concurrently with her anyway? They're a bunch of religious zealots and people who care about swords and all this other stuff, right?
Right.
But she wouldn't fit into the mold of these folks. Her family didn't either. Her dad was this artist and all. Mm-hmm. They were relics of old Mandalore, like Duchess Satine's Mandalore or something like that, right? So, this is a plot line that is going to need a lot of discussion. It was this undercurrent throughout the whole show up to this point, and still takes a little bit more little capstone moments, which we'll get to. But we've been sitting here laboring under what in the world is bothering Ahsoka so much and bothering Sabine so much that they're standoffish to each other. Mm-hmm. That they can't... What is so upsetting that they can't reconcile these differences. Because in real life, you see somebody you haven't seen in a very long time, it's water under the bridge. This is something so big and so terrible that it is still a wedge between them. Mm-hmm. And here's what it is. Her family's gone. I think we speculated in the past that somehow Ahsoka might have been responsible for that, but that's not the case. It's obviously even worse in a sense of, like, if, so many of Star Wars and in Ahsoka especially is about this master-Padawan relationship. Mm-hmm. And so the master abandoned the Padawan.
Right.
I mean, what is a big contention point about The Last Jedi? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, there's a lot.
That's a great point.
There's a lot going on here. And so you wonder why somebody would be so upset about, why a Padawan would be so upset about their master abandoning them. Mm-hmm. Here's why. And it's only a couple lines in this episode, but oh my gosh, dude, it's weighty. It really is.
You're familiar. Our listeners are familiar. Last Jedi is not my favorite Star Wars, but one of the things I took issue with was Luke, kind of running away from his problems, for lack of a better term. And it's really, I've come to terms with that, and it's Ahsoka's doing the same thing, but are people going to look at it the same way? I don't think so, but it is the same. She ran away from her problems.
It is the same. Ahsoka didn't try and kill Sabine, but it reconciles by the end of this episode. Mm-hmm. Totally, mm-hmm. Wholly, completely.
Yes.
And we're going to have a lot to say about that. But, I mean, I guess the only point is that you can understand why it was so contentious between these two at the start of the season. Mm-hmm. I mean, because her family's dead. Her potential family left her.
Right.
And then excuse me, Ahsoka has good reasons. Look at her heritage, man. Her master is or was one of the most evil tyrants across the whole galaxy, responsible for billions, if not trillions, of deaths, and all at, for seemingly no good reason. In lust for power, right? And so we saw a lot of this, especially when her actions with her master Hayden, Anakin earlier in the season. It was, what was the lines? She's like, "You're too dangerous." Is that what this is about?
Right. You're more dangerous and more powerful than anyone could have imagined.
Right.
More powerful and more dangerous.
And so here's this little person in Ahsoka's tutelage who's wearing a mask and has this extremely large chip on her shoulder and a bunch of guilt to reconcile from her perspective.
Well, and Ahsoka comes from a time where Jedi are younglings. I mean, Anakin was 10 when he got trained as a Jedi. Sabine's, 29?
Yeah.
I mean, she is not young to begin her Jedi training. Ezra was too old by old Jedi standards to begin his Jedi training.
And not only, it's Jedi training on top of, like, full-bore Mandalorian / rebel guerrilla warfare training. This is one of those things where you can't change the zebra stripes type thing.
Right.
And so, faced with that prospect, do you want to be, what if you were Darth Vader's master? What if she is Obi-Wan is to Anakin as Ahsoka is to Sabine potentially.
Right.
And that's no wonder Obi-Wan wanted to hide out, right? I wouldn't want to be caught dead. Oh, you're the guy who taught this guy.
Yeah.
I
will say, I have some criticism of this whole plot line, in fact. And the criticism is why save this for the finale? We've got a lot of mystery box storytelling going on in this, and I'm not saying it's all bad. Mysteries are good. Mysteries have existed in Star Wars. But in the original trilogy, there's not a whole lot of mystery box storytelling. There's twists. Darth Vader is Luke's father, but that's not like that was indicated in any way. And so we've been telegraphed a bunch of mysteries. Oh, be on the lookout for what Balin's doing. Oh, be on the lookout for what Thrawn and Ezra have been doing. Oh, be on the lookout for Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship. I can list like 10 more things. And so I think the story probably would have gelled a little better and this whole season would have moved a little smoother if we got this reveal in episode 3 or 4.
Yeah.
When Sabine betrayed Ahsoka and gave the map to Balin should have given us this exposition that Hu Yang's giving now, because it would have, one, made Sabine's actions a little more palpable then, which is fine that they're justified now, but also it's just we have so many mysteries that I feel like their relationship and their dynamic would have been more impactful to us as viewers had we known this earlier.
Yeah, and then I agree with you 100%. And beyond that, Ezra is the wrench in that relationship. Like, he had to find out somehow, but he was over there, couldn't, yada, yada. And then, like, it kind of goes with the scene immediately next to it. Does Ezra even know how Sabine got to that galaxy? It's kind of obvious how Ahsoka did, but Ezra never even found out?
No, he didn't. He still doesn't know, and Hera doesn't know, and so Ezra has not found out, and I don't see how he will find out, except
I thought
in years
Ahsoka
from
told
now.
Hera, but
no, she didn't. Ahsoka refused or withheld that information.
Oh, yes,
from Hera.
that's right.
Yeah. And so we really don't know. Now, Ahsoka's like, they took Sabine. But that's what Hera thinks. That, Sabine got taken, and so Ezra must have assumed Sabine escaped. Or he will assume Sabine escaped, just not knowing. And so
that's like a question mark that I didn't see anybody asking about.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So we learned where Sabine went. She went outside to kind of clear her head, and Ahsoka's meditating on top of the ship. And they begin a conversation, and Sabine's surprised that Ahsoka's not mad about this. Well, anger's not the Jedi way anyway, so Ahsoka shouldn't be mad in the first place. But Ahsoka says, over the years, I've made my share of difficult choices. Often no one understood my reasons except my master. And, the things that come to mind most immediately, well, she says after that, he always stood by me, even when no one else did. The two examples that are going to come to the top of everybody's mind in that mention are both from the Clone Wars, and it's when the Jedi Temple gets bombed at the end of Season 5 and Ahsoka gets blamed, the Jedi Council is willing to put her on trial, excommunicate her out of the Order, and then when they all figure it out, that it's just they're trying to water under the bridge, bygones be bygones, and Anakin understands and is the only one who believes her throughout that entire arc. And then we have the Siege of Mandalore, where Ahsoka comes to Obi-Wan and Anakin and says, Mandalore needs our help. We can stop Maul right now. And Kenobi dismisses it. He's like, we are fighting a war. We have to do our own thing. Mandalore's a neutral system, yada, yada, yada. And Anakin believes in her once again. And so we have seen her master stand by her. And now that she is accepted in Part 5 of the show, that Anakin was a good master, that Anakin had good in him, that not all of his actions were evil or motivated by evil or anything like that, she now understands how to be a better master because of that interaction, and she's now going to treat Sabine much more like Anakin treated her, instead of trying to treat Sabine like Obi-Wan treated Anakin, which Obi-Wan was not a bad master. This is not some kind of Obi-Wan slander, but Obi-Wan was a standard Jedi. Anakin was not. Sabine is very clearly not a standard Jedi. You got to take a more measured approach to training someone like Sabine, just like there had to be a more measured approach to training Ahsoka from Anakin because of Anakin's nature.
Well, Anakin had Palpatine whispering in his ear the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. There's nobody to whisper in Sabine's ear. Mm-hmm. I mean, Balin tried, but all she cares about is Ezra's safety and well-being and recovery, right?
Right.
But yeah, I love this reconciliation. It's the new Ahsoka. It's the this is where that plot line we've just been talking about comes full circle. She left that past behind. She chose life, right? I mean, and that has a deeper meaning than just for her individually. It's for Sabine as well. That, if you think that this person under your tutelage has the potential for danger, that's a negative choice as Sabine's master she made. If she were making a positive choice and said, I'm the one responsible here. I'm going to be here the whole time. I'm the shepherd of this child. Then, under the light of my guidance, this danger is not going to come to pass.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And then she says, no matter what happens next, I'll always be there for you. Just the same as she felt Anakin was always there for her. And this foreshadows what happens at the end of the episode, where Sabine sticks around.
Yep.
So we also get the line from her, being a Jedi isn't about wielding a lightsaber. Well, we mentioned this last episode. This is a Kanan line parallel. Having a laser sword doesn't make you a Jedi. Kanan says that either in Season 1 or Season 2 of Rebels, and this is just the same thing. You know who else says this? Marin, the Night Sister, to Cal Kestis in Jedi Survivor. So we got our big moments. We've got our reconciliation. Also saw people complaining about this. There's complaints all over online. This episode was not being panned by people. Most people loved this episode, but there are some complaints about this reconciliation. Oh, it happened too fast. Why isn't Ahsoka matter? Ahsoka's not matter because anger is not the Jedi way. Learn about Star Wars. Yeah. Criticize Star Wars from a point where you understand Star Wars.
Yes, and she's Ahsoka the White. I mean, she had that whole... did you not watch the previous episodes of this?
Right.
Another little line here that I loved was, talk about this lightsaber. She'd asked her if she's kept up... Ahsoka asked Sabine if she kept up with the training. And Ahsoka's like, kinda, yeah. And she says, Ahsoka says, train your mind, train your body, trust in the Force. Mm-hmm. I mean, she just saw Ezra do this, and except for one small point, she dominated Shin Hati on this thing.
Right.
Shin did not trust in the Force.
No, she didn't. The have you kept up with your training thing? We're getting a lot of lightsaber training reinforcement here because we had the Anakin hologram, and at the end of the Anakin hologram, he says, practice these forms at least more than I do. And that's a callback to the Attack of the Clones line where Obi-Wan says, if you practiced your saber skills as much as you practice your wit, you would rival Master Yoda as a swordsman. And so this is just, these lines serve to show that Ahsoka is Sabine's Jedi Master. If you were a Rebels watcher, it was hard for me, and not that I was like, oh, Sabine can't be a Jedi, but it was hard for me to really wrap my head around the concept of Sabine being a Jedi, and by the end of this episode, I'm fully bought in. But these lines exist to get you to that point, because there really wasn't evidence in Rebels of this gonna happen. But now we understand that it has come to pass, and it's a good thing. I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, this master-Padawan relationship, this master-apprentice relationship, it's a good chunk of what Star Wars is about and what makes it so fun. And to see this come to full circle and to see the potential that we're fixing to talk about, so uncanny, so cool, so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So we see the TIEs come to strafe in to attack the ship. They're firing on the ship. They definitely land. They land a critical hit right out the gate.
The TIEs actually work.
Yeah. They're not stormtroopers. They're not missing. These guys are nailing their shots.
Yeah. And the pilots have the Kintsugi armor, just like the stormtroopers.
They're not troopers
the
also.
The golden joinery.
Yep. And so the ship's going down. It's going to crush all the Noti. So Ezra and Ahsoka hop out, and they're holding the ship up with the Force. They're struggling. It was cool. It was, it's cool. It's noble anytime you can see them hold a ship up like that. But the real heroics come from Sabine, where she gets that little bit of fire out of the engines, and she rams the TIE fighters with the wings. Clips their wings. They go spinning. We know that TIE fighters are super brittle. They're like saltine crackers in the air. And so she rams the ships, and then their ship goes down. But it was a cool moment. I thought it was super neat. No guns or anything, just a Mandalorian brute force ramming those ships.
No, yeah, that jury rigging going on is really cool. Sabine's always done that. That's her character.
Yeah. She's a weapons specialist. She's a mechanic. She's got this technical stuff down. I mean, that was her. When they built the Rebels crew for Rebels originally, it's like they were building the D&D campaign. They have Kanan the Wizard, they have Hera the pilot, they have Sabine the weapons specialist, mechanic, Zeb the muscle, and then Ezra the catch-all, little guy who can crawl around places.
And Chopper the comic relief.
Yeah, exactly. So they knew the formula they were going for, and they've continued the characters well. And the little Noti, they all celebrate, the naughty, they all celebrate as the TIEs go down. They're so Ewok. Like, everything they do, they're very clearly Ewoks. I mean, it's just, and not in a bad way. I mean, they're just one for one. They fill that role in a really good way. They're cute and funny, and I really like the Naughty. I saw for sale online today a cardboard cutout, life-size cardboard cutout of the Naughty. I want one of those, man. Yeah. I think it'd be super cool. So, the ramming the ship and Ezra's lines in these scenes, these moments are showing to highlight how good of a job Natasha Leo Bordizzo and Iman Esfandi have done at capturing these characters. They did their homework. They watched Rebels. They studied the mannerisms of these characters because of the way Sabine, Hu Yang goes, "You're not going to get any power out of that. You're going to get a small burst." She's like, "That's more than I need." It sounded exactly like a line that Rebels Sabine was going to deliver. The way Ezra's talking to Hu Yang in the lightsaber shop. I mean, these actors were great casts, man. I mean, they really were. As I've said, it took me a little bit of time to warm up to Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera. It took me maybe a little bit of time to warm up to Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. Did not take me very long to warm up to Natasha or Iman as these characters.
They bat 1,000, if you ask me. And it continues throughout. It happened to this whole season. But all these characters and the actors subsequently are in so much pressure in this episode. I mean, they've had to deal with some bandits and a doofy little wannabe Jedi challenging them, right? And then here come these TIE fighters. It's one thing after another. There's pressure here, and they've really honed these characters jumping from a cartoon to the screen. They really have.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. So we then get a scene. It cuts back to the bad guys. This is a little bit of a throwaway scene. I think this just was a little unnecessary. Enoch informs Thrawn that the TIE fighters shot him down. Now the TIE fighters are down. And Thrawn says, okay, then we're going to prepare for a ground assault. And that's the whole scene. And we really don't get any kind of insight into Thrawn's character. We don't get any insight into Enoch. It really just exists for him to say, okay, we're going to prepare for a ground assault, which I think could have been communicated in a different way. So that was a little bit of a nitpick right there. We then get Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra riding 2 Howlers, headed to their destination, headed to the fortress.
Yep.
And we have Hu Yang fixing the ship, and we have 2 little Naughty helping him. and there is a Nadi running a bead. He is welding, man. No mask. He's not wearing a welding mask, so I don't know how his little eyes are doing. He must be able to shade him or something, but that guy running a bead, they are technologically savvy because he's just getting on that thing. It was so funny, man. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah,
Huyang's not doing anything, and the one Nadi is also not doing anything while this little guy is getting to work.
Yep, that's very cool.
And then Huyang says, "May the Force be with you." Just,
yep.
It's a finale of a Star Wars show. We got to hear that line.
Yep.
And so I was happy to see that. And then we cut to Morgan Elsbeth talking to some night troopers, and she says, "The blessing of the Great Mother shall protect you in battle." Kind of juxtaposing that "May the Force be with you" line, because they're obviously using the Force to do this, and the Force is with these guys in a totally different and perverted way. I mean, it's as the dark side perverts the Force, the Force is going to protect them, but essentially against its will, against the Force's will. Thrawn comes up, says, "Are these the volunteers?" And the word volunteers is extremely important here because we learn what happens to them later, and it also shows us that this is a little bit of the Thrawn from the novels. It's not, I mean, it's villain Thrawn. Let me be clear, Thrawn is a bad guy. He is not an anti-hero like you get in the novels. He's not, working for some greater good. He may be, but regardless, he's a bad guy. He's done a lot of bad stuff in Rebels. He's done a lot of bad stuff here. But Thrawn does have compassion for his troops. I mean, that's what this line is serving to show.
Yes.
And that's why they're so loyal to him. It's not some brainwashing. It's not some Night Sister magic. These guys are ardently loyal to Thrawn because he's kept them alive in an unknown territory for 10 years. And he has compassion enough to say, did they volunteer? Like, are they doing this of their own volition? Do they know? Did you explain the reasoning? And Morgan Elsbeth says they were all willing to make the sacrifice for you. Again, showing that these troops, and really Elsbeth by extension, especially when what she does in the next episode, and Pelion in Mando, like the people who serve Thrawn really see him as a messianic figure. And if you're hanging on to the Empire at this point in time, 4 years after the Battle of Endor, then you really do believe in the Empire and in Thrawn. Like, he is your Messiah, because without him, your Empire is done.
Yeah, good points. And I don't really have anything to add to that, but these next scenes, oh my goodness.
Well, there's some more to talk about from these lines still in this scene, because I don't think that the, messianic figure sits right with Thrawn, because he's very quick to say, it is for the Empire, for the security of our galaxy. And so it's one sentence, two halves. First half, it is for the Empire. And so we have Thrawn in Rebels give the line, "I merely require results for my Emperor." Thrawn's a pretty diehard Empire guy. He believes in the Empire, but when you look at the Thrawn novels, you see the second half of this sentence. Thrawn in the novels cares exclusively about where he's from, which is called the Chiss Ascendancy. It's a region of the galaxy in the unknown region. It's not part of the Republic. It's not part of the Empire. It's its own thing. The Empire and the Republic don't know about it until they meet Thrawn. And this whole little government, this whole society of Thrawn species are locked in this war with an entity called the Grisk, which you've heard us talk about the Yuzan Vong on different episodes of this podcast here and there. They were an extra-galactic threat from the expanded universe. The Grisk are essentially those renamed. I mean, they look the same, they act the same, they're all the same. And so the Chiss Ascendancy is threatened by the Grisk, and the reason Thrawn goes to the Empire in the first place is to learn what they know, get all this information, and to be able to protect the Ascendancy and the wider galaxy from this impending massive threat Thrawn perceives as the Grisk. And so I think that for the security of the galaxy line is really, I'm kind of thinking that might be that reason.
On, like we said.
I've speculated this whole time. I've said on Twitter, on Discord, on all kinds of comments that I didn't think that the canon novels were going to give a lot of weight to this, that there wasn't going to be a whole lot there. And I think I'm eating my words now, because I really do think that line can only mean, unless it's implying that Thrawn just really is this guy that believes in this galaxy-wide empire for law and order, yada, yada, yada. But I just don't really buy that with his character. I think that it's more that he sees this wider threat, which, again, does not justify his actions, does not make him a good guy, but it makes him a good guy in his own eyes. And that's the most compelling villains, right? Are the ones that think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, like Moriarty or something like that.
Right. So we get Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine riding to the fortress. And back on the comm, they're just talking about, is the ship getting fixed? Ahsoka's checking in with Hu Yang. Hu Yang's like, I don't know. I don't know if this ship is getting fixed. And she goes, you've kept her in the sky longer than I've been alive. So that implied a little bit to me, and this is Hu Yang's ship.
Right.
So, we were calling it Ahsoka's ship. Pretty sure the Lego set's called Ahsoka's Starship. Well, should not become that. This is Hu Yang's property, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
He's letting Ahsoka bunk here for free.
Right.
When Ahsoka's dead and in the ground, Hu Yang is going to be piloting this ship around the galaxy. And I think that's a super cool concept. Cool enough, we have got to get a comic book or a novel about what Hu Yang was doing during the Dark Times, during the Purge. Where was he between the fall of the Order and Ahsoka finding him?
Well, and I'll even take it a step further. If he's 25,000 years old, is he going to show up in this movie that we're fixing to get that takes place that far back?
I hope so.
And then, David Tennant's got to voice him if that's the case too, right?
Yeah.
And so, exactly like you said, but all these other questions. Why isn't he palling around with Luke Skywalker? And everything in between. It requires some sort of effort that, it would make a good comic book. It would make a good... I'd say a miniseries. Maybe that's a little bit too far, but a good novel, right? Mm-hmm. And the character. We only saw him before this in a couple episodes of
3 episodes of the Clone Wars. Yeah,
and so here he is in this. We got way more than we expected in this. We all speculated at the start that he was just going to be some sort of background character, show up here and there, but like at this point, Ahsoka can't exist without Hu Yang, and that leads you down to another kind of path. Because it sounds to me like, in almost some sense, like Hu Yang is some sort of perpetual being or something that as long as the Force exists, so does Hu Yang or something.
Right. Well, in the constant, Balin talks about these cycles and the overturning, yada yada yada. Well, Hu Yang's the one constant. He's just sticking around. I think that, Hu Yang quickly, because of this show, I think became my favorite droid. I cannot think of a droid that I like better than Hu Yang. And again, maybe it's recency bias, but he's a cool character, and all of his history with the Jedi Order makes him super compelling. I've really enjoyed David Tennant's performance as him. Also, David Tennant's got that same magic that C-3PO, or that Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, or Alan Tudyk as K-2SO does, and just... all you have to work with is your voice. You're a voice actor. And it's not even you're a voice actor in animation where the animated character can make facial expressions. It's a blank face. Hu Yang's got a little bit of eye movement, and that's it. He can squint his eyes and make them bigger, and that's all. And so David Tennant does all the legwork for this character, and he's doing an awesome job.
Yeah, you talk about batting 1,000. It's so cool. It's so totally unexpected and beyond a treat. I can't wait to... I really wish we could land an interview with Filoni where he'd be totally candid and answer all our questions, because I want the nitty-gritty details. How many people did it take to operate that puppet? How many hours were spent making that puppet? Are there more than one? They did rock'em sock'em robots with this thing.
Right.
This character has so much life and so much capability that we have to have more.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. Last little bit out of this scene is we get some naughty / pit droid humor. They reminded me exactly of the pit droids from The Phantom Menace, or the pit droids that Pelimoto has. But they're trying to cross those wires and he gets electrocuted. And Hu Yang is, do not wait for me. It was super funny, man. Those naughty are trying their best.
Yeah.
But it's like having Ewoks trying to fix your AT. Chewbacca wouldn't let the Ewoks drive the AT-ST, and Hu Yang's letting the naughty try to fix the ship.
Yep, very cool.
So we get our heroes come up upon the fortress, and Ahsoka is asking Ezra, what about this place? And Ezra says, when Thrawn, this is, I think, very important line.
Yes.
When Thrawn found this place, he woke up the Great Witches, and it wasn't safe to come here.
Yeah, he rebuilt the starship too. Yep.
So we get a couple pieces of information here. One, this means there was a period of time where Thrawn and Ezra were just lost here. Like it wasn't like they light speeded in from the Purgil, and Thrawn immediately came across the Great Mothers. There was something. One, Ezra had to escape the Star Destroyer, and then there was a period of time where Thrawn is just wandering, essentially, is what implies here. They're just both traversing Peridia, and when Thrawn discovered this, Ezra was like, no longer can I come to this part of the planet. And so the other one woke up the witches. And so I want to save most of this for our speculation segment, but I'm going to say right now I've seen a ton of people talking about the fact that what's in those crates are dead Night Sisters. Totally disagree. They are asleep Night Sisters.
Asleep Night Sisters.
They are not
exactly
going to be shambling corpses. They are going to be regular people,
fully functional,
out of stasis.
You know what? Probably not necessarily great mothers, but subordinate too.
Just regular Night Sisters like we saw on Dathomir. And it's going to be, I'm going to wonder what put them in stasis.
And there were thousands of them.
Yeah, yes, thousands. I mean, they're going to repopulate Dathomir. Probably more than Mother Talzin had originally. If the Battle Droid army could wipe out all the Night Sisters on Dathomir, then this is more than what we saw on that screen. So then Thrawn says he orders hellfire to be rained down upon him because he found out that they're at the gates, they're at the door. This is like Thrawn's signature move, right? To just shoot the turbo lasers from the Star Destroyer. I mean, he's an admiral first, and so that's what he's going to do. He's looking at his little diagram, which is just the same thing as the Death Star will be around the planet in 15 minutes. I mean, it's just, that's what these little diagrams are, is they're the Star Wars visual that shows us, here's a countdown. And so he then says, there will be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool lines. And so totally, like, this is Thrawn, right? He read that report in the last episode. He had this look of surprise on his face. And he knows that if you can't... This is when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yep. And I'll say, because of these lines, man, those Thrawn books, the canon ones, the 6 canon Thrawn books, they're doing so much legwork. I mean, the second one in that series, Thrawn Alliances, is about his relationship with Anakin Skywalker. It's just like, come on, man. Like, it is... I am so surprised how much those books are being leaned on.
Yeah. We got to read them shortly, right?
I'm reading the first one right now, actually. I'm reading just the self-titled Thrawn one, which you've read the comic book of, which the comic book is an adaptation of that novel. So you're essentially ready to move on to the second one.
Okay, good.
I'm reading the first novel.
Really good.
Yeah, I didn't read the comic. I wanted to read the book, but yeah, I've heard it's great. Then so that line also makes me think, what do you think Thrawn's gonna? How's he gonna feel? What's his face gonna do? How are his emotions gonna betray him? He's got a face that betrays him a lot in these. But how's he going to feel when he hears that the son of Anakin Skywalker overthrew the Empire and there's one in this galaxy? Not Anakin's apprentice, his blood son. And his daughter's kicking around in the Senate. Like, there's 2 of them. Now, this is getting out of hand. There's 2 of them.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's just so much open for speculation. In the books, I mean, Thrawn is so capable, and he even is here. But in the books, we talked about it. He has a listening device in the common room at the Senate that's able to get all this intel because they're so loose-lipped. And he has to employ Jorah Sabaoth to even come close to, and they through all this layers of trickery, do they even get close to dealing with Luke Skywalker? And it. So the speculations are just abound on what Thrawn. I mean, because reality is, and we're hoping that, I mean, because Leia and Luke still exist over here.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And so it seems to me that given the past books and stuff, that you can't have some sort of even a compelling story with, I mean, because Ahsoka's over here. She's got to get back somehow. You can't have a compelling story without the original cast in here doing something.
You're right. I mean, that's my hope for the movie, is we're going to get him back somehow. I think we need to. So the Howlers run into the fortress. Ahsoka and Ezra are opening the gate. Ahsoka also tells Sabine to help out. Really no indication of if she's doing anything or not. We just can't tell.
Sabine has her helmet back, too.
She does. She has her helmet back.
Very cool.
They open the door, and it's a real Indiana Jones style slide under at the last second, grab your hat kind of thing, because that second Howler, Sabine and Ezra's Howler, it's like millimeters away from smashing them in that door. It is close.
Yeah.
And so that was a real Jones thing. And then when Thrawn learns that they're in the fortress, this is the most uncomfortable he's looked. Like, his face betrays some real fear there. Like, he's like, oh my gosh. Like, they are beating his plans. They are further along than he had ever expected.
Right.
And he just is still underestimating Jedi. So we get the volunteers begin to attack Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine.
It was a cool little fight, isn't it?
It was. It was a great shot. The two white lightsabers in the middle, the blue and the green on both sides. It's the same as Thrawn's line from a couple episodes ago, where he goes, it's almost like the Jedi of the Old Republic. I mean, that we're getting three Jedi exactly fighting side by side in the time of the New Republic. Like, this is not something we've gotten to see
against grizzled veterans, too. I mean, these guys are no slouch. It seemed to me like this fight went on a little bit longer than it could have if these were just like conscripted doofuses who didn't want to be there.
Right. Now, you had said that we got to see Sabine's full helmet. Isn't seeing the full Mandalorian armor wielding a lightsaber so gratifying?
Well, and it continues on all the way up to the top of the fortress. Mm-hmm. Sabine is OP, man.
Yeah, she is.
She can take hits. She can shoot back. She can deflect. I mean, she's just impenetrable fortress of kick-ass.
Yeah.
It is really cool.
I'll say I did really like that Ezra and Ahsoka are obviously, I mean, they're trained Jedi. They are blocking these with ease. This is like the first thing you learn as a Jedi. Sabine can block the shots, but she's deflecting them into the ground. She is not deflecting them back. She's still got a ways to go, and she gets shot in the head, in the arms. I mean, her armor is tanking maybe more hits than her lightsaber is. And so she's still got a long way to go, which I'm happy about. It's not that she was just like
she's not staying on these
good.
Guys.
Exactly. But we see progress. We do see that she's been trained.
Yes.
Because you and I can't pick up a sword and deflect a bullet.
Well, yeah. Yep.
So the way they all fight together is so fluid. And it's something we saw at the end of Rebels, the way Ezra and Sabine could fight together, the way any of the Rebels crew could fight together. But when Ahsoka sees Sabine struggling a little bit, she tells her to go to blasters, and then things really ramp up. Now, Ahsoka and Ezra don't have to worry about Sabine as much. Now they are fully focused on offense, and we see Ezra incorporating more of the Force into his attacks. He's become really powerful. We see Ahsoka using these. I mean, it was just...
Yeah, comboing off of each other.
Exactly.
Very cool.
You know, Ezra slides people for Sabine to shoot, and he slides people for Ahsoka to cut in half, and she throws people to the side. It was just all of it. Sabine's covering their backs with shots. It was, again, they work really well together. They work really fluid together, and it's a 10-year gap for Sabine and Ezra, and for Ahsoka and Ezra. And so to see them just fall right back into the roteness of the 4 years that they were together in Rebels is really cool.
Yeah, very cool. I loved it.
So then they dispatch everybody, and we get the big reveal. We get the Night Sisters chanting, and we get the reanimation of the dead.
Yeah. So how long, you know more about this, how long have people wanted this?
Well, a long time, a long time in live action. And as long as we wanted Night Sisters in live action, we see them raise their sisters in the Clone Wars through basically the same means. And now we got to see it on screen. And we got to, my favorite part about all of it is the green magic seeping in and then making those stormtroopers so that their eyes, for people who they're wearing helmets so you wouldn't know, but if you see the Clone Wars, their eyes are just bright green. They're as black as Elsbeth's eyes are green. Yes. And they're just oozing out power. And so through those stormtrooper black eyes, you see that green pulsating, and it just looks so intimidating, and it looks so mystic. I was a huge fan of it. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah, it really was. And these guys are scary.
Yeah.
They're shambling zombies.
They're bona fide zombies. Yeah, they're like, and they're not, well, you know, they're zombies that can articulate and use guns, but they're shambling. I mean,
they start out shambling, but they take hits. Mm-hmm. They fall down after even with hit with a lightsaber and pick themselves up.
Right. And they're making undead noises too. Yes. They're like making groans. Now, I think so. The other day after Rapid Reactions, we continued our conversation just a little bit, and you had mentioned the fact that the lightsabers are not working. And I also, obviously, I noticed this. A lot of people noticed this, and I think this is a nit worth picking. They're not cutting through anything. I mean, they are slicing these guys on a surface level. It's like if you took a kitchen knife and cut someone across the body with it. I mean, it's a wound, but it's not cutting through things. There's no dismemberment or anything.
So the way I put it is, this isn't just the Ahsoka show, but it's across so many other things, except maybe Obi-Wan. The Obi-Wan show is like they're slapping people with lightsabers and bad things are happening. Sometimes dying and sometimes just falling over, like Finn or something. He got scraped across the back. But I mean, if you're tapping them or slapping them and their stuff's and it begs the question, you know, especially if you're faced with an opponent who can't die from conventional means, like by, you know, any opponent, be it droid or whatever the case, across the books, you can a Jedi can deflect a blaster bolt at somebody, and it kills them straight up. And so
basically, no matter where it hits them,
Yeah.
we see in the Clone Wars, blaster bolts get deflected into Beskar armor, and it kills them.
Yes.
I mean that's just a little bit of an inconsistency, but still.
I mean, and maybe they're throat shots or something like that. But the point is like, whoever shot the blaster bolt initiated the attack, so they can receive it, right? But the next question is, if these are people who can resist deflected bolts, and who, if they've already been slapped across with a lightsaber, why don't you start piecing these guys apart? You know, chopping heads, chopping limbs.
And we see it
you
later.
Can't pull a trigger if you don't have a hand. Right. I mean, this was, and so, gosh, there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, I think a cynical way is that Disney doesn't want to do this. They don't want Jedi out there just hacking people to pieces, right? Which except in Obi-Wan, the stormtrooper could fall on the laser fence and sorry for you, right? And Reva, they gave her license to do whatever she want. But like, then the other answer though is like some sort of level of rules of engagement from a Jedi perspective. You know, it's like I said, if a blaster bolt is initiated a Jedi, you're free game to deflect that back however you see fit. Like if you want to negotiate this guy with more, it goes to the wall. If this guy you don't want to deal with him anymore, back into his chest. And then there's like, you know, because some Jedi are capable with their blades to disarm other people. And then if they're like severe alpha level threats or something, you jump off your balcony, hack their hands off, and then hack their head off. And sorry for you, your kid can inherit your armor. Right.
Good reference to Django.
Yeah. and then that's conventional Jedi. Let's get back to one of the first times we ever saw a lightsaber being used. And this, Carter, you made this point. You want to talk about this? The desperation perspective?
Yeah. So we have in the original trilogy, we talked about this the other night. I don't think that we see Luke Skywalker use a lightsaber against normal people. And by normal people, I mean not an animal like the Wampa and not another lightsaber wielder like Darth Vader, except once, and it's on Jabba's sail barge. And even on Jabba's sail barge, I think he might only, like, cut one or two people. And everybody else is kicks and deflecting blaster bolts. And it's like, Luke Skywalker, you don't see that light. Now, we see in the bar on Mos Eisley, Ponda Baba get that arm cut off. You had mentioned
instantaneously. And this is the desperation. You know, some dude who's been holed up on a desert planet, looking after after Luke for so long, and here's this goofball out of nowhere threatening to do some nonsense. And so he reverted back to when him and Anakin were chasing Zam, who was that?
Zam Wessel.
And it's like, you know what? I want to slap this dude's arm off. We're going to end this right fast. I mean, but it's a desperation perspective. Obviously, with Luke, there's a Jedi mindset of defensive,ness. Overarching of almost like a do no harm type of thing.
Yoda says as much. A Jedi uses the Force only for defense, not for attack.
Right.
And we see, even in the prequels, obviously droids are getting cut left and right. That's the same thing as if I went and cut my toaster in half, though. It's just not the it just, it's whatever. And so we have, in the prequels, you have more dismemberments. You mentioned Jango Fett. Great example. But that was a direct threat. And Mace Windu's, he's a touch above.
That was his philosophy, though.
Yeah. And so then you have Anakin in the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, where he does incapacitate Count Dooku. Both his hands are cut off, not shooting lightning from the nubs. He is dispatched. But instead he cuts his head off, and that is to demonstrate that Anakin is falling to the dark side. And so when we see Jedi, cutting heads off with lightsabers, it's almost always to say they are falling to the dark side because they should be dispatching foes instead of killing them. But in this Ahsoka situation, we see these guys are already dead. They thought they killed that whole room. So what do they care? They need to be chopping heads off.
Right. A joke I made, probably privately, I don't know if I've ever said it on stream, is there has to be a prosthetic limbs department in the Jedi Temple.
Right.
And business has to be booming. Well, now that we've discussed this philosophy, I think that's just a joke. I don't think that would be the case. Because another kind of joke, the Jedi have to fill out reports, surely, of everything that they do, of every encounter that they have. And Jocasta Nu probably, or one of her underlings reviews these things. And if you got some nerd in there who's like cataloging these encounters and like coming up with statistics, how many foes how many battle droids did this guy dispatch? How many Sith did this guy over here encounter or whatever? I almost wonder if there's some statistic of who has de-handed, what Jedi has de-limbed these opponents out there. And so if your percentage of de-limb exceeds a certain number, you have to go to counseling for your potential to be too bloodthirsty or something.
Right. And I think you're right that they have to have these statistics. Well, and it shows you're cutting off too many limbs. You are getting closer and closer to the dark side. The last point I want to say on this, 2 points, is that one, lightsabers are a little fluid. They change, in the original trilogy, they're a samurai sword. In the prequels, they're butterfly knives. In the sequels, they're baseball bats. They're different. And we see in the original trilogy, in the Emperor's throne room, Luke and Vader's lightsabers bounce off of railings, and they don't cut through these railings. Now, probably just an oversight. But you can say that when you see Qui-Gon Jinn cutting through the door in The Phantom Menace, it's taking effort and work. It's not like he's just slicing through it like butter. He's slicing through it like with a saw would cut through a piece of wood. It's going to take a little bit of time. And so maybe when they're just doing these surface level shots, it isn't enough. But now that they know that cutting the heads off are incapacitating, you could have still made the argument that it's an overwhelming group of stormtroopers. I mean, you can't cut all their heads off. There's a bunch of them. They're moving quickly. And so just cut off a couple of them to kind of demonstrate that these lightsabers are still working properly.
Well, and another thing I'll say, it is a trope that in any zombie fiction, the protagonists are usually stupefied by them and are unable to kill them. They have the thickest plot armor there is.
Yeah, you're right. And the last thing I'll say is those zombies shamble at the beginning, and then they never shamble again. They're running
they're fully capable.
Full sprint after just a few seconds. And maybe that's what it is first couple seconds, it's, they got to uncreak their joints, and now they're on the move. They turned from Night of the Living Dead zombies into World War Z zombies really fast.
Yep. And they're fully capable, able to bust down doors through technological means. It's really cool.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But yeah, zombie stormtroopers. Do you ever think we'd see the day? I mean, people wanted this so bad.
I didn't. I know. People have, the Death Troopers novel in the EU was really popular. It's not this. That one's a zombie disease, but still it's zombie stormtroopers. And folks are really happy we got these now. And I am too. It was super cool.
And as brought about by the machinations of the Great Mother Night Sisters. Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So we then get a Ezra and Sabine interaction. Sabine saves Ezra from some night troopers. They shut the doors, and we get some good banter. Ezra can tell Sabine's training, and she goes, "What's your excuse?" And Ezra just says, "I missed you." That dynamic between these two actors is super good. They are portraying these two just like it's Rebels. But man, it's getting to a point. Where is the romance in Star Wars? These two had a kindling little romance. Ezra was smitten with her in Rebels, and you don't see any of that here anymore. And I want to think
past episodes.
Sabine's living in his house. She's pining after him. She's going to save him. It seems like they have a romantic connection that I think Rebels fans are readily available to see on screen. We know that it existed in Rebels. Even towards the end, Sabine started to seem to reciprocate feelings. And so it's like, why in Disney Star Wars are we just not getting any romance? And I don't say Disney Star Wars in some kind of derogative way, but it's just a fact that in the Solo movie, got good romance. Name one other Star Wars product that's come out since The Force Awakens that has a good romance. The Rise of Skywalker had a romance, but it was ham-fisted. It wasn't... You can see the little outlines of it in the first two movies, but it doesn't... There's no, like, ultimate come-to-fruition moment except in that movie. We don't have a dedicated Padme and Anakin, Han and Leia at all anymore. And I thought Sabine and Ezra were going to be that, and they haven't been.
Yeah, it's a truly missed opportunity. And this is what makes any fiction... So many people love this about any fiction stuff. And, I mean, it goes so many different ways. And this was the path of least resistance that had some foundation in the past. This is another question for Filoni when we get to interview him finally is, what in the world happened here? Were you directed not to do this?
Right.
What happened? I mean, because you know he thought about this. So,
well,
I guess
and
we'll see.
You know, they didn't have long together. They only had a couple episodes together, but wouldn't it have just been, they're riding in that cart. Let's get a little bit there. They're riding on that howler together. Let's get a little bit there. At the very end scene, let's get a little bit there. And then it makes Ezra being gone even more impactful. It gives it
really
even
does.
more weight. And so it just feels like a missed opportunity.
Even she pined for him. She was so motivated to go find him at the start of the series. And now she had him. She's like, okay, cool. Now we're back together. Let's go sell Girl Scout cookies or glad you're back.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. It's just disappointing. And I'm tired of asking where's the romance in Star Wars. Like I want to see it. It exists in The Empire Strikes Back in a massive way. It exists in Return of the Jedi. It's what the prequels are about.
It's so important.
It is.
It is.
To just storytelling. Any story that you read or watch, worth reading and watching, usually has romance.
We're not asking for some in-your-face...
I don't need a romance movie. I don't need a rom-com in Star Wars. I don't need any, I don't need anything massive. I just need an acknowledgement that human beings have feelings for each other. That it's a common thing, especially that they develop in wartime or when they're in that close of proximity.
Maybe
that Ezra
Lando
and
will do
Sabine
that.
were.
I mean, because there's a good foundation for that in some fiction.
Yeah, but it won't be romance. It's gonna be Playboy action. I don't see a Lando romance coming to fruition.
If that's all we get, I'll take it. But
yeah, I think maybe the Acolyte is now the ripest ground for it. Skeleton Crew is about a bunch of kids, so I don't really want it to have romance in it. But I definitely would like to see the Acolyte tread that ground. And it's always something I've always thought would be interesting is seeing some romance from a completely Sith perspective, dark side perspective, because we know that's why Anakin fell. But I mean, Sith are not forbidden from attachments; they're encouraged. So why don't we see more Sith with a girlfriend? More come on, it makes way more sense. So anyway. We get the next scene, which Thrawn is again, they're advancing faster than he had planned, and so he says they need more time, and he tells Elsbeth, we need more time. And she immediately knows what she needs to do. And so Thrawn says, for the Empire, and he walks away. And then under her breath, she whispers, for Dathomir. And so when I saw this, I was pretty perplexed. I was like, what does this mean? This is like the anti-Marin from the Jedi video games, where it's, why, if this is for Dathomir, you're avenging Dathomir, the Jedi are not to blame for that. It was the Separatists, and the Separatists became the Empire. You can't implicate the Jedi in the destruction of Dathomir at all unless you're well, they didn't do anything, and that is a loose excuse, especially for the Night Sisters. Yeah. And so I got to thinking about it more, and I realized that she's saying for Dathomir because they're going to repopulate their world. Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra are collateral in this. Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra, their mission is not to stop that. Now, if they knew this was the case, it would probably also be to stop that. Right. But that's not their mission. But she knows that if Thrawn doesn't succeed in getting to the galaxy, Dathomir is not getting repopulated. And so this is what she means by for Dathomir.
Yeah, that's very insightful.
So then we get to see right behind her, Night Death Troopers.
I want to call them Death Night Troopers.
Death Night Troopers? You think that's
I
the right?
don't know. That's going to be a fun little nitpick
Right.
between people.
Well, and they're undead, so they're just Death Troopers.
Yeah. Undead Death Knight Troopers.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a wrong way. But
No, I don't think
Death
so.
Knights are better sounding.
Is better than Night Death? Yeah, I gotcha. So Elspeth goes down to confront Ahsoka. All three of the Jedi run in. Ahsoka says, go, I've got this. You know, Sabine says, no, not leaving you. And then Ahsoka says, you've got to stop Thrawn. So they do split up again, as Hu Yang did not advise.
Right.
And then you get a really good choreographed fight between Ahsoka and Elsbeth.
Yeah, Ahsoka and Elsbeth, the rematch.
Yes.
And so this is leveled up Ahsoka versus leveled up Elsbeth. You know, before Ahsoka pretty well dominated Elsbeth. She had that Beskar spear, and she was able to take a couple hits, but it really wasn't anything. Now Elsbeth is holding her own. She's moving faster. She's executing more exacting techniques. It's a cool, one of the coolest choreographed fights. I'm not going to call it a lightsaber fight because it's not.
Right.
But that sword, the way she's able to move it, Ahsoka with her two lightsabers, it's a really cool, fun fight.
I agree, but I'll say the ultimate fight of the show coming down to Ahsoka and Elspeth has a little bit of the breath taken out of it because we've seen Ahsoka go toe-to-toe with Baylan a couple times. We've seen them go toe-to-toe with Shin. We saw Sabine go toe-to-toe with Shin. And those two characters are essentially vacant from the episode. And I don't have a whole lot of weight with Elsbeth's character, and I don't really see... I mean, I see the overall narrative tension between Ahsoka and Elsbeth, and the tension's supposed to come from Ahsoka's... The clock is running down from her. But there's not, like, a relationship dynamic between these two characters that makes this fight have some kind of impact. This isn't Obi-Wan versus Vader. Like, there's not all the cards on the table. The fight, it exists for emotion's sake. This fight has no emotion.
Yeah, and they definitely could have set this up a little better. You know, all it is Elsbeth is a roadblock. And you know, this is the Ahsoka show. Do you really think it's going to end? How do you know how it's going to end even before it starts?
Right.
There's no this precipice of what if, you know.
Yeah, Elsbeth's not the one who's going to beat Ahsoka.
Even in the Obi-Wan show, it's like, you know what's going to happen through and through. But, you know, at one point, Obi-Wan's buried in rocks. And the saber is slapped into Darth Vader's face at the end. So, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, there's some serious stuff here. And even at the end of this little fight, it's like, slash, oh, she's dead.
Yep, you're right.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah, it's like, she was not a character that I've been tied to. I mean, she's essentially, I think that Morgan Elspeth has been great.
I mean, in so many other cases, bad guys die in these super dramatic ways. And we've already talked about one. Count Dooku had his hands chopped off and then decapitated. Darth Maul was bifurcated and thrown down a pit.
Right.
And it's a very anticlimactic villain death.
Yes, and I want to say this has nothing to do with the actress. I think that Diana Lee and Santano did a good job, but Morgan is the weakest villain in the show. It's just a fact. I mean, it's the writing coupled with who really cares about her backstory, coupled with her backstory is kind of confusing because she's a Night Sister, also worked for the Empire, also somehow had this wealthy Corellian family. Like, a lot going on here. And so there's not a ton that's like, I care a lot about this fight or what happens to Elspeth. And so it's just like, that part made this feel like a little anticlimactic. A little bit of a setup thing where Ahsoka didn't really face any of the villains that it's billed as she's going to face.
Well, and the reality is the Night Troopers and the Death Night Troopers are scarier than she is.
And so that's what happens next is while the Ahsoka-Elsbeth fight continues, Sabine and Ezra get to the top of the fortress, and there are two Night Death Troopers. They are fearsome, and they are clearly augmented in some way. They're stronger than regular human beings, and so they're not just reanimated dead bodies. They're also stronger. It's like they underwent the dead person reanimation process, and they also underwent the process that Savage Opress goes through
Right.
in season 3 of the Clone Wars, where he gets like buffed up. He's stronger. He's bigger because of the Night Sisters' magic. These Death Troopers went through the same thing.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, they take hits. Their armor seems tougher too.
Oh, that one lifts Sabine up by like one hand, slams her against a wall. I mean, that's just not something that the average person's doing. She's got all this armor on her. They're definitely augmented.
And they can take hits in the head.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, Sabine shoots the one so many times in the mask, you see the zombie mouth.
Yeah, the decrepit
the
face.
chomping on it. And it's one, really scary. I mean, it's for Star Wars, it's like, it's at the tip top of like the woo moments, you know, and that then has the added effect of the strength becoming so fearsome. And then we get a big moment, a big reveal that they've been building the whole season.
Yes.
Sabine sticks her hand out, the lightsaber wiggles, and then it launches to her hand. And this is obviously a direct parallel to Luke Skywalker on Hoth.
Yeah, it is. Man, I jumped out of my chair when this happened. I was screaming, hooting, hollering. Yes, it finally happened. I mean, and so what does this mean? She overcame a barrier, and she obviously did it earlier in their episode. But this is the Rubicon, if you will, where we get to see it finally work.
Right.
And man, what is it? A cool point. And we've already said it, the OP, or the ultra powerful Mandalorian Jedi she's the embodiment of it right there.
Yep.
The last one was Tar Vizsla or some other one that we don't know about.
It's a little fuzzy. Hu Yang says there were not many, which implies there was one beyond Tar Vizsla, but it's pretty fuzzy. We don't know.
But I mean, you think Mandalorian Jedi kind of break Star Wars a little bit?
They're pretty powerful.
Because if one was on there in Geonosis, if Jango Fett had force abilities and some lightsaber going around, that would have been a fun fight.
He's a fearsome opponent. You're right. Well, it's like Pong Krell, 4 arms, 2 double-bladed lightsabers. It's like, man, you're a human with 1 lightsaber. Do you want to go up against that?
Yeah.
So we then have Sabine right through the head, through the temples of the Death Trooper. Bzz, green lightsaber, the eyes flash green, just like it would with the magic, but it's the lightsaber. It's dispatched. Ezra's struggling a little bit with his fight. Sabine distracts his Death Trooper enough for him to call the Force, and raw decapitation. I mean, it's pretty metal. It's pretty metal. And they gave the zombie mouth reveal, so they're not like, oh, Ezra just chopped some regular guy's head off.
Well, even this decapitation took place behind a pillar.
Yeah, yes, they did not show the full thing, just the head rolling away.
This, it's strange to me, but we've already talked about that.
Oh, I actually think that's pretty in line with Star Wars, because Count Dooku's decapitation is not like you see the head and then you kind of see the body slump, and Jango Fett, you never see the head roll out of the helmet.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like,
actually, I think that was edited out. I think I remember me in the theater seeing that happen.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing, is it's like, I think the decapitation not being one fluid thing on screen it stays standard with what we've seen before. So we cut back to the Ahsoka and Elsbeth fight. Ahsoka's being overwhelmed by more night troopers in the room. The Blade of Talzin has some power behind it. Also, Elsbeth must be augmented because she just has like this overhand strike that sends Ahsoka to the ground.
Yeah,
and there's like a sound
shadow
effect to it.
Yep.
Yeah, and so there's a little bit of power coursing through her. Ahsoka's being backed up towards the top of the tower. And Ezra and Sabine are back on top. As the Star Destroyer pulls away, it's a super far jump. We would not consider it a jump. We would just be like, well, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not a super far jump. It is not a jump. And so Sabine and Ezra's like, we lost. We can't get up there. And Sabine says, no, we got to do it. I'm going to push you across, then you're going to pull me across. We've seen Ezra and Kanan do this a number of times.
Right.
And Ezra's like, what are you talking about? We're not going to do that. And Sabine's like, no, we just got to do it. The longer you wait, the harder it's getting. And so Ezra just has to trust Sabine and trust in the Force. He just has to throw himself at it. And that's the core of being a Jedi, is trust in the Force.
Right.
And so Ezra backs up, does the run, jumps through the air, And then the Kyners do it again.
Yes.
The Force theme swells, and Sabine pushes him across. Now, slight criticism. There's a little bit of comic relief. He doesn't make it. He grabs on and then jumps up. It's a very Rebels thing. It's just like, it deflates a little bit of the big moment, but not too much. It's still great. Ezra hops on and knocks both those stormtroopers down.
Oh, no, Sabine shot one.
Oh, she shot one. You're right. Ezra knocks one down. Sabine shoots the other. And this happening, a bunch of people there. I knew when I saw it, there would be criticism. This would be something that wasn't going to sit right with people. It wasn't going to sit right with the people who just want to look for nitpicks and the people who want to hate on it. But it's difficult to explain away because Sabine had no Force sensitivity in Rebels, and now that's a pretty big Force power. But I think that I have, some pretty ready ways to say that this is going to happen, that this is not a big deal. And so, like we just mentioned, the whole point is to trust in the Force. Believe in the Force. Believe that you can do it. Have faith. Core of Star Wars is to have faith and to have hope.
Yeah, and it takes an immense amount of pressure to make diamonds, right? So, you're being chased by a mob of undead stormtroopers.
Yep.
And your friends back there, and Thrawn is the person that you're going to get. Heck yes, you're going to be able to reach down and do some stuff you didn't think you were capable of.
Yeah, you're right. And so we have Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And so Sabine is doing here. And Kanan has some really good elaboration on this line in Rebels, where he says that if you think this is a paraphrasing. I do not remember exactly what he says, but if you are attempting, then it means that you don't believe you're going to succeed, that you are going to do it or you're not going to do it. And he's just elaborating. He's putting some more weight behind Yoda's lines, explaining it for a little younger audience on what do or do not, there is no try really means. And that's what's happening for Sabine here. But if the faith and hope message of Star Wars is not enough for you to get that this is why Sabine can do this, I have one more justification, and that is we know that Sabine's clan is in House Vizsla, and so Sabine is a descendant of Tar Vizsla. Sabine's house comes from the original Vizsla line, and so Tar Vizsla was an insanely powerful Jedi. She has the Force flowing through her veins.
Right.
It took a while to unlock, but it's there. And so I think that the justification makes sense.
That belief makes such a big deal.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's much more about the faith and hope. But if you need some kind of biological explanation, there you go.
And even looking back, it wasn't apparent at the start of this series, but Ahsoka had to have chosen Sabine for a reason.
Right. So we get we get Morgan and Ahsoka on top of the fortress, fighting it out. The stormtroopers are making a ring around them, just watching it. Morgan's definitely holding her own. We see at one point slice right through Ahsoka's Shoto lightsaber. And so not only does that mean that blade can cut through whatever metal her lightsabers are made of, but it also cut through that kyber crystal of hers and basically rendered it inert. We saw the last time a kyber crystal gets destroyed in the Last Jedi, this giant explosion. And so this sword is immensely powerful. Just slice through that crystal like butter.
Yeah, very cool.
And so then Elsbeth looks up and sees that the ship's getting away. But if you trace the actress's eyes, she looks at Ahsoka and then up. And I have no idea how she didn't see Sabine standing on that platform. Like, just the way, they focus on Morgan Elsbeth's face, and she carries up her eyes to look at the ship. And it's like the way the head moves, had to have seen Sabine. And so that was just a little goofy thing. But then she looks at Ahsoka. She sees that they've won, essentially. And she tells Ahsoka, "You will die here alone." But then Sabine yells, "Not alone."
Yeah.
And that foreshadows something big. The "not alone" line foreshadows something big that I want to discuss in speculation. I mean, that's just, it's going to lead to a lot of speculation. But as you've been saying this whole episode, this show has focused heavily on the Master-Padawan relationship. The show is essentially, Dave likes to explore concepts a lot in Star Wars. Sometimes whole seasons of the Clone Wars are kind of dedicated to concepts. And one of the concepts is, what does it mean for a Jedi to have a Master-Padawan relationship. And Hu Yang's line earlier foreshadows this, and the importance of the bond that they share. We see in this series the Ahsoka and Anakin relationship, the Ahsoka and Sabine relationship, mentions of Ezra and Kanan, and we see the failed relationship between Shin and Baylan, where that went wrong. And this show had a concise message. You've been saying it all this episode, that the Master-Padawan relationship and the reinforcement of it and the importance of it and the not abandoning each other exists throughout this show. You don't leave your Padawan behind. There is an episode of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, the 2000, I think it's 2003 is when it came out, and Yoda says to Palpatine is encouraging Anakin to be in Starfighter Command while Obi-Wan's on the ground, and Yoda says, no, a Master and Padawan's places at each other's side. He says it backwards, obviously, but that's the gist of it. And it's just a recurring theme, especially in the prequels, but throughout Star Wars, is the importance of the Master-Padawan relationship. We see it in Yoda delivering, his Force Ghost delivering those lines to Luke in The Last Jedi. Luke imparts the same knowledge on Rey in The Rise of Skywalker. It's just something that George really cared about, and that Dave very clearly wanted to get across to the audience with this show. And I think, in hindsight, now that we have the full picture, it's what the show's about, is the importance of the Master-Padawan relationship.
Yep. And gosh, it was so... Like, we didn't see Sabine jump across. And so they kind of knew it was going to happen, because how is Ahsoka going to get out of this? Mm-hmm. Right? But when not alone, and then they start kicking butt,
right.
it gave Ahsoka that energy she needed to overcome Elsbeth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Very cool scenes.
She, as you had mentioned, she cuts through Elsbeth right through the stomach with both blades. She grabs the blade of Talzin out of her hand, lightsaber, blade of Talzin.
Yes.
You hear that magic whoosh out of her, just like you do when those Night Sisters or any of their constructs die. Also, right before that, Sabine is marching through. The Night Troopers taking them out, and she had to have 100% a Jedi survivor because she is blaster in one hand, lightsaber in the other, completely perfectly in a way we haven't seen Sabine do. Yes. And so it was super cool to see that, and I love that she is going to continue with her Mandalorian-ness through this. She is not, because we saw at the beginning of the show, she runs out there with her lightsaber, no Mandalorian gear. She's out there trying to be a Jedi. When another part of this show was she needs to embrace both parts of herself.
Right. It's really cool to see it come together. Even in that game, that was a new lightsaber stance that you could play. They got the standard ones of a single, double-bladed, or twin, and one of the lightsaber stances was shooting the blaster and wielding a lightsaber. And so I'll tell you, in real life, she's constantly shown shooting two blaster pistols.
Mm-hmm.
They even master sharpshooters can't shoot two pistols at the same time. It's more efficient to draw another magazine or something, or pick up another gun after your other gun's out of ammo. It's next to impossible to effectively shoot two handguns.
You're telling me that the akimbo mode in Call of Duty is not real?
No.
Our armed forces aren't out there with two Uzis?
Nobody is. That would be cool. Don't get me wrong. But let's give some deference to the fantasticalness of a TV show and of somebody of Mandalorian training and heritage. She's a badass.
Yeah.
I don't care how you slice it. I don't care what you think about some this or that. She's out there with a lightsaber doing Force stuff and shooting a blaster in her other hand, and you can't slice in your leg. She's a badass.
Yep, you're absolutely right. So we cut to the Eye of Sion. Thrawn's on the bridge. The Great Mothers say Morgan is dead. Thrawn, so the Great Mothers seemed a little pained by this. I mean, they didn't want their sister to die. They genuinely, I think, appreciated everything she had done. I do not think the gift or anything like that was not because they did not think she was worthy of it. Morgan Elsbeth, as far as from their perspective, Morgan Elsbeth is a good and faithful servant.
And the only other thing is she kind of had to die because we can't have two versions of Pelion next to Thrawn.
Right. And so Thrawn also seems just a little bit pained by this, and he says, she did it in service to the Empire. But I think he just is. He does care about the loyalty of people. I mean, she came to get him.
She expended a great deal of effort and resources to recover him from this other galaxy.
Right. I'm happy that her sacrifice is not lost on the villains. They're not like, whatever, like throw her away. I mean, it's not, these guys aren't Palpatine, and Palpatine's a wonderful villain, but he is, okay, that person is a tool. Well, Thrawn doesn't see it that way. He definitely cares about the loyalty of his people, and he cares about them as individuals, like a normal military commander would. And then the mothers, I mean, she's a sister of theirs, and that is just very consistent with how the Night Sisters feel and think. We then cut to Ezra in the transport, seeing the fight happening down there, knowing that he's up there alone now.
Right.
And so there's a comm that says, we're sending reinforcements, and Ezra goes straight into Rebels mode, picks it up, and he's, okay, affirmative, blah, blah, blah. It's just super funny, right in character. Right in character.
It really is.
So Ahsoka then asks Sabine, where's Ezra? She says, going home. And Ezra's coming home.
Yes.
The hashtag can rest. We know where Ezra is, and Ezra's coming home. Now we got to get the hashtag, where's Sabine? Where's Ahsoka?
Yes.
Because they need to come home. But I am, again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm so happy that Ezra is finally making it home.
Very cool. I want to circle back to this at the end of the episode.
So, I absolutely agree. So Sabine looks down at her helmet, and there's a moment where the camera fixates on it, and she grabs it and keeps going. And there's not a moment of hesitation, but they focus on it to make it clear that she's not giving up those Mandalorian roots, that our Mandalorian Jedi is here to stay. Our blaster-wielding, hopefully someday jetpack-wearing Mandalorian is here with us, and she is also a Jedi now.
Yeah, lots of fun speculation come with that, too.
Yeah, it absolutely will. So, we have Hu Yang come in, Ahsoka called them, they're getting off, they're getting on the ship, and they escape the fortress and pursue the Chimera. The fortress is destroyed. They blast the fortress to pieces. And then we get Thrawn opening a channel to the ship, coming in behind the Chimera, and he starts it with, I know you because I knew your master.
Yeah, I wrote down this whole thing. I want to say it because it's so important. Ahsoka Tano, allow me to commend you on your efforts today. You have been quite the worthy opponent. I regret we haven't met face to face, and perhaps now we never shall. Still, I know you because I knew your master. I concluded your strategies would be similar. One wonders just how similar you might become. Perhaps this is where a Ronin such as yourself belongs. Today, victory is mine. Long live the Empire. And poof, into hyperspace, going to another galaxy. Man, what a gut punch. What a twist in the knife to Ahsoka.
I really thought they were going to make it. I didn't. At this point, I was pretty hopeful, and I thought it was going to be Millennium Falcon on the back of the Star Destroyer.
Yes, that's what I was hoping for, too.
Almost exactly, I thought that was what they were going to do. And didn't happen. And I was a little bit surprised. I was happy to be caught off guard. Not because I was happy they got left, but because, I didn't want to guess the right answer because it's more exciting to be wrong. And so I was surprised. But that whole line worth of Thrawn's is worth dissecting a little bit.
Oh, God. Almost every word.
Yeah. I knew you because I knew your master. That Alliances book is just pulling a lot of weight, man. It is pulling a ton of... we've got to read it.
Yes.
We've got to read it soon because it's pulling a lot of weight. We were talking about our research that we did today for this episode, and I know you were looking at the Ronin term.
Yeah, so a Ronin is ancient Japanese, samurai. They were basically fighters and warriors of the Lord who controlled whatever region. And if the Lord died or the master died, and the samurai didn't have any master, they were Ronin, or otherwise were excommunicated or expelled. They were still samurai, but they were masterless samurai.
Right. They were an army of one, essentially, like Ahsoka. Not anymore though. She's got Sabine, but yeah. She is essentially a Ronin.
And so that's what I'm saying. This is a gut punch. He's being a butthead to her, right? I mean, because he's trying to get in her head a little bit or twist the knife, like I said,
right? And
because calling her a Ronin when she's not. I mean, she's had this huge reconciliation with Force Ghost Anakin. She's straightened her ways out and mended the relationship, and not just a hey, let's work together, we're coworkers relationship with Sabine. This is a bona fide, tried and true master-apprentice relationship with Sabine now.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And so for him to say that is just a low blow. Now, obviously, he doesn't know, but
Right.
he knows Anakin's not around, and he knows what he was, and that's the whole line of one wonders just how similar you might become.
Right.
And so this is that Thrawn being Thrawn. Right.
And he reminds her, you may end up like your master, which he is one saying he knows that Anakin was Darth Vader, which we also know he sussed out in the novels. But he's saying, you might fall to the dark side. Again, just basically mocking her.
Right.
Thrawn being Thrawn, getting inside her head. We mentioned they don't make it, and I'm really curious, who's going to feed Merle? That we learned. So the
Loth Cat.
Yeah, it's the Loth Cat's name. They put it on the Star Wars Twitter yesterday that there was a live feed of the cat on TikTok, and you could watch the live feed of Sabine's cat.
That's
it was
hilarious.
just asleep, but they officially gave us his name, which is Merle. And who's gonna feed him? She's not just gone for a week now; she's gone for a while.
Yeah.
So we get the end of that. The ship jumps away in the crackling hyperspace that they do, and they're stranded. And so they come back to the Naughty, and the Naughty are all excited. Their friends are back. They're like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really, they didn't succeed in any goal except for getting Ezra back to the galaxy.
Well, I mean, the Noti, they're prey. They have adaptations or evolutions of ultra defense, right?
Right.
And so to have, I read a fan fiction or some sort of fiction, to us, aliens are like, think of the alien from like the Xenomorph or something. They're big, scary monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Or like a Wookiee. If we met one of those, it'd be a big, scary alien, right?
Right.
Well, reverse that question. Are there aliens who look at us and how we exist and think of like one of the lines in that little story was, why do the humans bare their teeth when they look at each other?
Oh, yeah.
Why do humans they're always showing you their teeth? And so from some other aliens' perspective, we might be these horrible looking things because we're bearing these
Right. That's aggressive.
these hard implements that we use to masticate our food at every chance we can. And from my perspective, it's a sign of affection. But for some other person who's never seen us, it's a sign of like you're exposing your weapons to us. You know.
Yeah.
And so. To these Noti, having these very powerful individuals show up has to be an extreme blessing to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. You're right. Yeah. And, Ezra says as much that they're peaceful, so they need some kind of defenders. So they're back. Ahsoka and Sabine and Huyang are back with the Naughty. And then we see, which this was a given, but we see Morai in the distance, the convoy that follows Ahsoka around.
Didn't this hit you so hard when you saw this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and this was
deal.
a small little scene. You turn around, you're like,
Yeah. I'll say the show from this point on, from this second to the end, leans pretty hard on Rebels and the Clone Wars for future setups.
Yes.
If you're not in the know about those shows, you're kind of not in the know about what any of this means, why any of this is a big deal. So Morai is a convor. That's the name of the bird. It's an owl.
It's an
essentially.
owl,
yeah. She is shown up in the Clone Wars and Rebels. She acts as a protector and guide for Ahsoka. She shows up.
Mandalorian too.
And the Mandalorian, you're right. And so she shows up in huge moments of Ahsoka's life. We see Morai in the World Between Worlds. We see her after the crash of the Venator from the Siege of Mandalore, and you mentioned we see her when Din meets her.
Yeah, and the interaction between Ahsoka, Grogu, and Din. And hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder a bit. There's no reason why this owl Morai thing, like the species of bird, should not exist in this galaxy, right?
Well, Morai is
so this is purely a mythical, fantastical, like a force construct.
World Between Worlds is where she shows up. I mean, how did she's on that planet in The Mandalorian, also on the planet in the Siege of Mandalore. This bird doesn't ride with Ahsoka. It's not like Ahsoka's like, get on the ship. The bird just shows up.
Right.
And so it is. I mean, it has to be this mystical, spiritual thing.
It's not some chance that this animal also exists on this planet.
Right. And so a lot of people speculate that Morai is the daughter's will or spirit manifested. And if you don't know what I mean by that, just stick around on the podcast for a few more minutes, and you'll understand what I mean. But just know Morai is the daughter's will or spirit manifested, is what a lot of people believe. We have no confirmation of that. But Morai kind of serves as a guide to Ahsoka, showing her that she's on the right path, basically showing Ahsoka that you are following the will of the Force. And I'll say from right here on, Cassidy, my wife, was a little bit frustrated because she has watched almost every piece of Star Wars. She has not watched Resistance, which I don't think she will watch. I've only watched it once. And we're watching through the Clone Wars right now, and we will likely wrap that up with Bad Batch. And when she finishes the Bad Batch, she will have watched every piece of Star Wars at least once. And she was still had questions that were unanswered and that got answered in other shows. And so I can totally understand her frustration here. And I want to imagine how general audiences feel. I've been spending a lot of these podcasts the last few weeks kind of defending that, I think this is getting across to general audiences. You didn't need to do a lot of homework. And these last few scenes, I don't really see how they have the weight unless you did the homework.
Right.
And even
extreme ways,
still, you watch all the Rebels and all the Clone Wars and the Mandalorian, the Morai is still in the background. She is only referenced verbally once, and it's in the World Between Worlds episode of Rebels. And so any other time she's just in the background, you still have to be an eagle-eyed fan to even understand that.
Yeah, the Mandalorian too. Yep.
Yeah, and so I just don't know. I don't know why. Or I just don't know how well this finale can resonate with general audiences.
Yeah. This is 10 seconds.
Sure, but the next parts are also pretty difficult, I think, for general audiences to grasp.
These scenes exist for you to come seek out our podcast and listen
That's
to it.
true. That is true. If your friends are confused, please direct them here, because we explain it all.
I'm not going to be offended if you need to listen to the whole thing, but, tell your friends to skip ahead to at least this part.
Mm-hmm.
Because Carter knows more about this stuff than I do, but, man, it's essential.
It is. It is essential.
And to skip ahead ever so slightly, this is going to be in a major part of season 2. Mm-hmm. That if you go and watch back, if you listen to this podcast, going back and watch these episodes of the Clone Wars, you're going to be Sabine. You're going to have the full armor. You're going to have a blaster in one hand and a lightsaber in the other.
Right,
it's up to you to get the Force powers.
Right.
But
you want to be equipped walking into the next season of Ahsoka. And if you're not going to watch 11 seasons of TV, just go back and listen to a couple of these episodes. We've got you. So we then go to Shin, and Shin's got some semblance of the power that she was after. I mean, she's now essentially a warlord to these nomads, but she is stranded, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah, she looks defeated.
Yeah, I mean, she's visibly dejected. Her masters abandoned her. Thrawn abandoned her. Thrawn didn't care at all about her, but he abandoned her. And as far as she can tell, she's going to die here.
Right.
I mean, she is going to live out her days as this meager nomadic warlord eating naughty meat, and that's it. That's all she's doing.
Having to contend with Ezra and Sabine having to contend with Ahsoka and Sabine,
right?
And having these little tiffs with them the whole time. I'm not joining your team,
right? And so that makes me ask the question, did Baylan ever care about her? Or was she just a tool to him?
We don't know.
I know, we don't, and it's completely unanswered. But she's not taking her place among the coming empire. Her empire is one of dust. I mean, she is the leader of like 35 brutes. I mean, barbarians, essentially. It's just not what she had in mind for herself. And she looks like she's about to cry when she holds that lightsaber above her head.
Yep. And she's such a cool character. The speculation is going to be fun for her.
Yes, yeah. All right. So this next scene is essentially worth breaking down frame by frame.
Yes, it is.
Baylan is walking out on a rocky outcropping, and he looks ahead at a pyramid or a mountain pulsating some kind of yellow light. And so, go ahead.
Let me say just one thing. To set this up, as a viewer, everyone has been watching this whole episode. And Baylan and Shin have not even been a thought.
Haven't been mentioned yet.
Had been mentioned nothing. Like you think Thrawn would be like, hey, what about the mercenaries? Or Morgan, what about the mercenaries? Mm-hmm. Non-existent. So I mean, I'm even up until Shin. I mean, we kind of knew something was going to happen at the end, but I've been frustrated.
Right.
What's going? I mean, because these are major characters. We want to know what happens to them, and here it is. Anyway.
Well, and to get this out of the way right now, and that we know in the real world, Ray Stevenson passed away. And it was sad when it happened. It was upsetting to lose an actor like that. I've been watching the HBO series Rome that came out in the early 2000s. He's a main character in that. He does a phenomenal job. It's really sad to lose an actor like that. And so episode 8 we're going into this is Ray Stevenson's last performance on screen. Well, it really wasn't. I mean, part 7 was. This isn't what we see of Baylan in this was not a performance. It's really cool for Star Wars, but as far as Ray Stevenson goes, part 7 of Ahsoka was his final performance.
Right.
And so it's really sad. And so that part was frustrating, that we got to the end of episode 8 and it wasn't like that. Now, no way they could have known. I mean, it's not anybody's fault that that's the case. It just is what it is.
I mean, but we'd speculated some final confrontation. I mean, because it'd been building to it between both characters. I mean, Sabine had been impaled by Shin, and they had 2 other encounters with no resolution. What's the deal?
Right.
We wanted it. Something. But I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Given the plot line, and also obviously given the fact that no one could know he was gonna pass away, this is great. And so we see the pyramid with the pulsating light, and then the camera cuts. So this is back view of Baylan. We cut to front view, and we see this rock head. And so as soon as I saw this rock head, I literally just laughed and smiled because Dave has done it again. Like, just the head alone, I immediately knew what this was. And it is a character called the Father. And then we get a further outshot. You see this giant rock statue with its arm extended, pointing at that pulsating pyramid. Baylan stands on the tip of the hand. On the left side is another rock carving in the likeness of the actor Sam Witwer, who voices Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, voices Palpatine in some things, voices many, many characters. And on the right side, you see a figure, a body without a head. And these are massive statues. I mean, Baylan standing on him, you can barely see. He looks like a rock on top of the finger. And so, as I said, the middle figure is named the Father. The left figure is named, I guess when you're watching the TV, the other figure with the head is named the Son. And then the headless figure is the daughter that I had mentioned when talking about Morai.
Right.
And so these characters come. This leaves us with a bunch of questions. And we only have some information to impart upon you, listeners, of the context that we have here. We don't know what's happening after this, though. But these are all characters from an arc in the Clone Wars, Season 3, Episodes 15, 16, and 17, called the Mortis Arc. And so I went back and watched the Mortis arc to educate myself again before this, because I wanted to make sure that I got everything right. We do the work so you don't have to here.
Right.
This arc has been the source of thousands of hours of speculation from fans. I mean, it came out years ago. It came out in 2010 or 11. I don't remember which one. And it is given us tons of speculation. And so the most important thing to know about the Mortis arc is that it's about these 3 beings, the Father, the Son, and the Daughter, and it introduces them, and they embody the Force. The Father embodies the balance of the Force, the Son embodies the dark side, and the Daughter embodies the light side of the Force. We also see them show up again in Rebels Season 4. They're in a painting outside the Lothal Jedi Temple. It's how Ezra gets into the temple. And so these are essentially Force deities. They're thousands of years old. They embody parts of the Force. They are not the Force themselves. They are regular temporal beings, but they are essentially demigods of the Force. Also, very interesting when I learned that went back and did this research. The 3 episodes before the Mortis arc are the episodes their Night Sisters are introduced in.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And so there's obviously some kind of connection between them and this planet and the Night Sisters. But we have no idea what Baylan wants to seek here. We have no idea what he's after.
Something's calling to him.
So many questions. Something's calling to him. As I said, I went back and watched these episodes, and so I gleaned some insights from watching these, and I'm just going to kind of give you guys my notes. I haven't talked to Colin about this, so he's going to react in real time. But one of the first things you notice is Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Anakin are drawn into this planet called Mortis, which is where these figures live. Obi-Wan's first line upon realizing they've landed on the planet is, I can't even lock down where in the galaxy we are, or if we are even in our own galaxy.
Right.
Crazy foreshadowing from
Yes.
years ago. Over a decade. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens in this show. There's a monastery where the father resides on the planet Immortus. It looks very similar to that pyramid that Balin's headed to. I mean, it looks extremely similar. Ahsoka has a vision on this planet of her future self. Her future self, she delivers a lot of lines, but the most important one, the one that strikes out the most is, there's a wildness in you, young one, seeds of the dark side planted by your master.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. There's when you're on this Mortis planet, the firmament is the exact same as the end credits from Ahsoka. It's the blue with these yellow lines. They have different symbols, but it's the circles and the dots. You have a line from the father to Anakin where he says, "But leave this planet, and your selfishness shall haunt you and the galaxy." So the father, the deity, brings in Anakin to this planet because Anakin's the chosen one. He wants Anakin to take his place. The father is dying, and he is the reason that he keeps balance between his daughter, the embodiment of the light side, and his son, the embodiment of the dark side. Without the father there, the son is going to be able to overtake the daughter, and there's going to be this tumultuous conflict. And so the father brings Anakin here to bring balance. Anakin doesn't want that. Anakin wants to fight the Clone War. He wants to go back to his wife. He does not want to live on this planet for the rest of his life. And so we go through these episodes. You really just need to watch them. There's a lot that is going to inform here, and there's some stuff that'll probably inform that I didn't catch because we just don't know what's going to inform this yet. But some more stuff that we see. The sun has his own tower. That tower is the same color as the Night Sister's magic. It's the pulsating green. There is a dagger on this planet that's the only way to kill these people, and it materializes out of thin air just like the blade of Talzin did. At some point in this arc, Ahsoka is corrupted by the dark side. The sun sways her to his side. He basically takes over her mind, and she lays her insecurities bare in her lines with Anakin. She thinks Anakin's overcritical of her. She doesn't. She's, basically the same kinds of problems Ahsoka has in this episode with Anakin as a master were already put into place in this episode. Right. At some point, the daughter is killed by the son in these episodes. He does it on accident, but he kills her nonetheless. And the daughter's last act, this is probably the most important part of this arc, is the daughter's last act is to revive a dead Ahsoka. And Ahsoka literally died. She's confirmed to have deceased right here. And so she revives Ahsoka as her last act, essentially making Ahsoka become an avatar of the light side of the Force. Right. She does not have the daughter's power. She is not the daughter, but she has... This is why Morai follows her around. Every depiction you see of the daughter in art has Morai in it on her shoulder or nearby, and now Morai follows Ahsoka around. And that's why people make the connection that Morai is basically the daughter's will instantiated in the real world.
Yeah, and with Ahsoka as her vehicle.
Yes. So ultimately, the culmination of the arc is Anakin kills the son after the father kills himself. And this restores balance to the world because now nobody is there. There's not the daughter, the son, or the father. They're all dead. But it's important to note that the daughter dies much sooner than the father and the son and the father are killed by Anakin's lightsaber. They are not killed by the dagger. Right. And so maybe that's why the statue, the daughter's head is off that statue. And again, we have a lot of speculation to come. I just want to give a little bit of speculation is maybe that's what happened to Peridia, is upon the daughter's death in that galaxy, something became corrupting Peridia. We don't know. Yeah. We mentioned Morai earlier as this manifestation of the daughter's will and spirit, and it begs the question, can the son and the father not do the same thing? Is the son out there somewhere manifested as some kind of spirit? And likewise is the father. We just have no idea.
Yeah.
And so because I watched this and got a lot of questions, basically, and not too many answers, I went to find some Dave Filoni interviews, tried and true ways to get some insight, usually. So I went and found the Clone Wars Season 3 Blu-ray featurette.
Wow.
that has a Dave interview about this. And so it's completely unhelpful. Classic Dave.
Yeah.
I'll just let you know what he says. He says that he believes he shouldn't directly answer questions about the Mortis arc ever, because he said that he has answers to the questions that, with the vision of Qui-Gon on the planet, what about Ahsoka's vision? Are they really dead? Yada, yada. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, if he answered him, it'd lay the mystery bare.
Exactly. And he says he wants us to continue to ask questions. The purpose and the reason for them creating the Mortis arc is to explore the nature of the Force and to really beg the question, is balance possible? Will it ever come to fruition? And so here's my annotation based off of that Dave Filoni interview. Is the daughter embodies the light side, the father the balance, and the son the dark side. George Lucas, in his notes originally about the Force, says that the light side is inherently selfless and the dark side is inherently selfish. The daughter delivers a line exactly like that, saying that's their natures. She says, my nature is selflessness. His nature is selfishness. Neither of us can help it. And the light side exists to protect the balance. The daughter protects the father from the son, who is always trying to topple the balance and subsume the father, and it's by his nature. And so that when the light side is winning, that's the will of the Force, because the light side defends the balance. It keeps the balance in place, and the Force wants to be balanced. But the light side, the defender of the balance, is not the balance itself. And so George says that the balance is restored to the galaxy when the Sith are destroyed, but that's not because the Sith are the embodiment of the dark side. That's because the Sith seek to use the dark side as a tool to destroy the balance. And so that's why it's not balance when there's 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. It's not about math. Right. It's about the dark side being this fundamental corruption of the Force. And there's no way for the dark side to exist in power alongside the light side without toppling the balance, which is the will of the Force, is for the balance to exist. The Jedi light side users solely exist to defend the balance of the Force. Although they use the light side to do it, they exist to defend the balance.
Right. Sounds good to me.
And so the question is how does this inform Balin's mission? I mean, it's just what does all of this mean? Your guess is as good as ours.
Yes.
And we'll have some speculations on that, but for now, it's just, where do we go from here?
Right.
I will say some speculation on Balin standing on the finger that I want to talk about right now is, where are we after Rey's passing? I mean, what's going to happen? We don't, and I don't want to speculate about it right now, but that's a whole separate speculation.
Right.
Is how do we
tell
reinforce
the
this
story
story
that we want to tell? Yeah.
Exactly. And Balin's character obviously has gravitas and weight to it, much in part due to the fact that Rey's performance was so amazing. I mean, it's like Christopher Lee with Dooku. Just Ray Stevenson is lending his acting chops to this character, but the character of Balin means something. Dave didn't just make him as some throwaway Jedi. His history and backstory is going to be important.
Yeah,
we don't know anything about it
He
yet.
was made with the intention of season 2 and whatever that adventure is.
And so, where are we headed from here? I don't know yet. I do not know. But we're going to figure it out together on our speculations.
Yep.
So, when we look at these two scenes, Shin and Balin, it's like a combined 20 seconds. I didn't really measure it, but it's nearly a combined 20 seconds. And there's so many hanging questions surrounding just these two scenes, and they may have been my favorite part of the episode. Not to say that the rest of the episode wasn't great, but this is just, the questions this asks and the itches it scratches and the itches it creates are really fun, and it's why I'm interested in Star Wars in the first place.
It really is. Yep.
So we cut next to Thrawn and the Eye of Sion and the Chimera hyperspacing in. I almost said warp, almost Star Trek. But they hyperspace over Dathomir. It's this red ball of a planet. I'm like that meme from, what is that, Ford versus Ferrari, where Leonardo DiCaprio is pointing at the screen,
right.
Where I'm like, that's Dathomir, because immediately Enoch comes on screen. He's like, we've arrived at Dathomir. And then we get a shot of all the crates, and they're going to be unloaded on Dathomir. So again, got to be Night Sister bodies.
Right.
Super Indiana Jones Area 51 shot right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just the never-ending crates. You can't see the end of the room. Really, really terrifying right there.
It really is.
These witches are totally repopulating Dathomir. But now to what end? I mean, they, again, in the continuity before the Separatists exterminate the witches, they basically only care about staying on Dathomir. That's their planet. They're isolationist. But we learned through the Ahsoka show at the very beginning that Cetos used to be in the domain of the Night Sisters. Whatever planet Ahsoka got the star map from in the first place was the domain of the Night Sisters. And so they had their own little empire.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're coming back to want that. But how does that rub with Thrawn? Like, where does that lie between them and Thrawn?
Right. That's fun to speculate about.
Yep. Mirroring the first scene of the show perfectly, we have the same unknown shuttle coming into the New Republic, into Home One. Now we've got way more. The New Republic's not taking any chances. They got way more people there to meet whoever's in this shuttle. They are not getting fooled twice. But then we have a stormtrooper walk off. And why did he do the helmet thing? Yeah. Why is he wearing the helmet? Just take it off. But he comes off with the stormtrooper armor on. Ezra gets to add a Night Trooper helmet to his collection.
Yes.
And then you have Chopper roll up to him, which was super cool, man.
Yeah. The only thing I tried listening to what Chopper says several times, and the first thing I think he says is, whoa! But I can't really I can't decipher anything else after that.
Yeah, it's tough. You got to really listen to what Chopper's saying. It's hard to translate everything he says, but he rolls up, and Ezra disembarking the shuttle. It's a really touching reunion. Hera is just Ezra, and she is stupefied. But Hera's lost more family. Now Sabine's gone, and Ezra's going to have to break that news to her. Ezra's kind of melancholy. He's like, I'm home, but he knows that that's not the full story.
Is, what's the actor's name? Iman Esfandi. Man, you talk about hitting the nail on the head with Ezra. Mm-hmm. Gosh. Mm-hmm. Hey, Hera, I'm home.
Yep.
God.
I know. It's great. I wish the scene wipes just a little too soon. I wanted a warm
hug.
embrace. Exactly. Yeah. She is his mother. I mean, by all they adopted Ezra at the beginning of Rebels. She is his mom. Right. Kanan was his dad. She's his mom.
Adopted
I wanted to see the
yep.
hug. Not literal mom, but yes, exactly. Also begs the question now. We've been asking it all season. Where's Luke Skywalker in all this? Thrawn's back. Ezra's back. Ezra's a Jedi. Luke is a Jedi. He has got to come into play at some point. I am a little upset that the season didn't give any kind of lip service to what Luke's doing because Ahsoka interacted with him. Like, we know she knows about him.
And Leia got some lip service.
Which is good. It's super good. I'm very happy about that. But Luke is should play a big part in this.
And it could have happened way earlier in the season. Like, hey, have you talked to Master Skywalker about this stuff? Mm-hmm. What does he think? Mm-hmm. And he's trying to set up his school.
Yeah, so. You're right. He is. So we cut back to Peridia, and we get Ahsoka telling Sabine, this is where their story crescendos. Ezra is where he needs to be, and so are we. And I don't think Ahsoka knew this is where they needed to be until she saw Morai. And then she knows. This is where I'm here for a reason.
Yeah, my sentiments exactly. And I mean, and this is all season 2 speculation stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, he's where he needs to be. I mean, because really, Ezra is Thrawn's ultimate foil. Mm-hmm. And they're both back in the regular galaxy. And so we get to see more rebels, right?
Right. And then, so Ahsoka says it's time to move on. That definitely gives you a sense of they're never going back. Their story ends here. We don't know that. But that's what it feels like. And then you've got Sabine staring off at the horizon. She's like looking like she sees something. And Ahsoka's like, what? And she goes, oh, it's just shadows in the starlight. Which, that made me laugh only because, so that episode came out yesterday on Tuesday, October 3rd. Well, October 4th is when we get the first Phase 3 High Republic thing. And the name of that comic book that is releasing today is Shadows of Starlight. I just thought that was a weird. If you're a big High Republic fan and you saw that, you're like, what a weird. Yeah. It can't be like a coincidence insofar as they didn't know that was going to be the case, but they're not connected in any way. Like, right. It's not. The stories aren't linked, but it was just kind of a weird little line throw in there, and also that's going to be the title of this thing.
Right.
But Sabine walks away, and we see there was a shadow in the starlight. And it is the ghost of Anakin Skywalker looking out at both of them. And it's a little fuzzy if Ahsoka saw it or not, but I'm pretty sure Ahsoka saw the ghost. And then she turns around. It's the same as Luke, sees Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, on Endor, and Leia does not, but that's because Leia hasn't really unlocked her Force potential yet. Kind of the same thing for Sabine. You can either go with Sabine isn't strong enough to see him yet, or she doesn't have that deep connection with Anakin that would let her see him. But regardless, Anakin sees Ahsoka in his full shimmery blueness.
Yeah, I saw some people talking online. It's like, why is Anakin appearing to Ahsoka so much, but not Luke Skywalker? I mean, there's not really a mechanism that we could have delivered that except for Shadows of the Sith.
Exactly.
You got to read that book to understand.
Yeah,
or
and we get
scroll back to our episode on Shadows of the Sith.
Definitely scroll back to that episode. We mentioned Shadows of the Sith at least every other episode on our podcast, but it's a great book. Read it. It totally gives a justification for why Anakin, he does appear to Luke, and why he doesn't appear in the future to Luke or to Ben or yada, yada, yada. And so it's worth checking out.
Yep.
But Anakin's ghost at the end watches Ahsoka walk away. It's the exact same parallel of Anakin watching her walk away from the Jedi Temple, except he's obviously not sad and frowning. He's way more hopeful. I think this also confirms the fact that the World Between Worlds Anakin was a Force ghost. I know some people have still been pushing back on that idea. Just don't see how you can now.
Right.
But we get the beautiful credit score. Swells. Yes. The Connors do a great job. It's not exactly the same sound we've heard on the credits. It's just a little bit different, and it's great.
Remix.
It's very, very good. And so that's it. That's the end of it. That's the end of Ahsoka Season 1. I'm confident we're getting a Season 2, and it's going to be a wild ride when we get a Season 2.
It really is. And man, we got a lot to speculate about. But overall, I'm super pumped.
Yeah, I am too.
I mean, like, there's lots of cliffhangers out there. What's your notes say about this? I don't want to say.
I've seen a lot of belly aching about the cliffhangers, and people are like, "Oh, why do we get left on so many cliffhangers?" But I was kind of prepared for that after Episode 7, and as I've said, I've accepted it because of the Ezra resolution. That is it was stated that was the goal of this season, and they got that done. They introduced the Shin and Balin plot lines here. That is obviously going to be a cliffhanger, and everyone called by the middle of the show, Thrawn's going to end up in the galaxy at the very end.
Right.
There just wasn't enough space to tell a we defeated Thrawn story by the time you get to Episode 5.
Why would they make such a cool character just for one episode to get rid of him?
Right. So I thought it was totally fine. But man, I know we're really excited for Season 2. I know you guys are excited for Season 2. And normally, we would hop into our Always in Motion segment right now. But for any longtime listeners of this podcast that know the season finales, we want to dedicate our speculation to an entire episode. And so we are not going to be covering any of our speculations in this episode. You're going to have to tune in next week to hear our speculations. But we've got something really special we want to share with you guys also for next week. And that is, we have our very first call line. You can leave a voicemail with us, and you got to keep it under 3 minutes. But we want to hear your speculations. Longtime listeners of the podcast, first-time listeners of the podcast, people who've seen everything in Star Wars, people who've only seen this show, which is crazy if that's the case. But regardless, we want to hear your speculations, so call our voicemail line. It's going to be in the description of this podcast, but the phone number is 806-318-8903. I'm going to say it again like I'm an old school TV commercial. That's 806-318-8903. Call us, leave us a voicemail, leave us your speculation. We're really excited to hear it.
And leave us your name so we can give you proper credit.
Yeah, definitely. At the beginning of the call, just say, my name is such and such. I'm from Peridia, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And so now, Colin, we will hop into our next segment, which is still happening. That's our Patreon-powered segment, How the Force Works. All right, Colin, as I mentioned, this is our Patreon-powered segment, and so we have patrons send in a question, and we answer them live on the show. It can be anything. It can be about Star Wars, Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones, whatever, but this question comes from Meatloaf, and it is, with Ahsoka ending soon, what can Star Wars fans expect to see, and how soon? That's a great question, because we don't know exactly.
So the writer's strike and the actor's strike really impacted so many things. There were 3 projects. 2 of them are speculated to have been completed. That's Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte. And then on its heels, in the final throes of production, was Andor Season 2.
Whoop. So excited for that one.
and before, the past news, that Skeleton Crew was supposed to come out November, December, end of the year time frame. But we talked about it previously, it has been pushed back until, quote unquote, early next year. Mm-hmm. And I only just today saw a trailer for it that was shown on at the Star Wars celebration.
You saw the Skeleton Crew one? Because the Acolyte trailer got leaked. It got leaked a few months ago. It's been floating around. But you saw the Skeleton Crew one?
Skeleton Crew.
You didn't even send it to me. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I apologize. I can't tip my hand every time, right? I can't. So, but it was real grainy. You couldn't tell much. The bad guy from The Mandalorian was in it, exactly like
Vane. Yeah. And I know there's an Ortolan little kid in it.
Yes.
Max Rebo's species.
Yeah, Ortolan. And Max Rebo has a fun story in the Fact Pop novel that just came out.
Yeah, he does.
And the Ortolans are a really cool species. They sound fun.
They don't have, from a certain point of view, they don't have hands, or another certain point of view, they don't have feet, because they only have one set of limbs. And so they walk on their hands and they eat with their feet.
Yeah. But it does show that, the trailer does. So yeah. I think that was in a still or something from before. But, Skeleton Crew seems like a kid's show, but we don't know enough about it. We know Jude Law. We know Steve Urkel's in it.
Right.
We know Vane is in it. We know an Ortolan kids are running around. The premises has something to do with finding lost kids.
Well, and Jude Law's a Jedi. That hadn't been confirmed, but we've heard that rumor enough times that I think it's been pretty much confirmed.
And Jude Law is a very accomplished actor. He has been in some science fiction stuff. A movie is getting to be old now, but it's a movie called AI with Haley Joel Osment is in there. He plays a robot character. It's a very Asimov-centric type robot style movie. And so, with the acting chops that are in this, and the premise sounds just fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a total question mark, right? Mm-hmm. And the same thing with The Acolyte. There's going to be I know when that comes out, there's going to be a lot of the headline grabbers are going to like that show for some of the people who made it. And this is a total. It's another outside the norm from Disney. It takes place in the past, and it's from the dark side perspective.
I'm expecting it to be a lot like Andor.
Right, and I mean, we hope.
Yeah, that is the hope.
But we really don't know enough about it. We saw a trailer, but it's these really loose, disjointed, no explanation scenes.
And it's grainy. Again, it was a video that someone took on their phone at Star Wars Celebration. And so they haven't had a public trailer release either.
Right. And so really the fact is that information, trailers, and other news articles are long overdue for these two TV shows. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know anything about why that is. There has been nothing on the horizon except for what we've already told you. And past that, the movies are years and years
Mando
away.
season 4 is written, but that's it. They never started production.
We don't even know what level of written. I mean, they say it's written all the time, but then years go by and it's just a framework or something.
I will say that what I expect, this is total speculation on my part. I mean, complete speculation. So I want to be clear. I have no indication of this, but what I expect to be Disney's ace in the hole for we need to fill a time gap with a TV show is The Bad Batch Season 3.
Yeah.
Because it's animated. I don't think that animated actors are under SAG-AFTRA. I might be wrong. I am not up on union law, but I don't think that voice actors are in SAG-AFTRA. And so, and if you are, who plays Fee in The Bad Batch?
Wanda Sykes.
So she's obviously a screen actor, but I think she can do voice acting even if she's on strike with the screen actors. And so I think that they could still do Bad Batch. Now, if they will or not, I don't know. But
Which we want to see more of. It's a good show.
Yes, but we do know last season. We know that it's 3 seasons, so this next one's the last one. It was said to come out next year. It's also been devoid of news. We haven't heard much about it yet, but I expect that it'll get rolling. I don't know if the WGA is part of the Bad Batch stuff. I don't know if they are covered under animation. I think they are.
Right.
So now that the WGA strike is over, maybe the Bad Batch might get rolling. But again, we are... all Star Wars fans are a little lost right now. We have not had much communication from the studio. We have been spoiled. Yeah, it's not like the dark times. It's not like the 90s where we're not getting anything. And so we're seeing around. What you can expect from us, books, comics, topical
comics,
questions.
Toys. Gosh.
I mean, we're not going to stop covering Star Wars. Just because there's not something on TV does not mean we're not going to talk about stuff.
The tabletop games are constantly getting evolutions. I encourage you to check those out.
Well, one of our favorite episodes that I did, I don't know, I mean, we had a good listener response to it, but was our History of Star Wars board games episode. I mean, just expect stuff like that, man.
Right. And then another thing that we just popped in my head is the Lando show. It went from a TV show to a movie. And some, just pure speculation, some of this, if Donald Glover is motivated and cares about this character so much, maybe he can sell Disney on producing this thing a little bit faster. I mean, because, gosh, if I could help produce that movie, I would. I'd give Donald Glover whatever amount of money he wanted. I know it'd be a sure thing.
Right.
I'd make my money back for sure.
Right. And I'm sure it's being written now. Obviously, strike's over. He and his brother are penning it. So... maybe by the time they finish writing it, the actor strike's over and they get to production. We don't know, but that's a maybe. And look, the next Star Wars, there's no Star Wars Celebration next year, so we're not going to have some big, gear up for the event. And then 2025, the big thing's going to be the movie. I mean, there will be a movie that's coming out that year. It will most likely be the Rey movie, if the strikes didn't derail it too much. I don't think they did. But it's like, we don't really know. The future is a little murky beyond the projects that have been announced, but as Colin said, we know 2 have been made, 1 is nearly done, and Mandalorian Season 4 and Bad Batch Season 3 are what I would call givens. They're going to happen. But beyond that, it's all speculation.
Yep.
And we know right now just the track record for projects being announced. Until we know that production is well underway, it's not safe to say that that is happening.
Right. And another thing with Disney, with the success of the company, there's peaks and valleys, and Disney and Lucasfilm along with Marvel, they're at a valley right now. There could be, the future is way untold on this stuff, and we don't know how low that valley is going to go. We don't know what's going to pull them out of that valley. I'm confident that that valley will cease to exist, will turn into a peak at some point. But what are the mechanisms for that?
Right.
And I mean, there's hyperbole involved, and all of it's pure speculation. This Ahsoka story was perfectly fine to me. I understand there's people with a different point of view. I can point to many more reasons why I think they're wrong compared to why they think they're right. And let's have that discussion.
Yeah, we'll host a debate between you and someone on here.
That'll be fun.
So, yeah, that's the answer to the How the Force Works question. Good question, and something that's especially going to be on everyone's minds now that Ahsoka's wrapped, and it's on our minds. We're going to see what's on the horizon. There's plenty, like we said, though, plenty of books coming out. Comics get put out every week. We're going to be talking Star Wars. So we're your home for the Star Wars drought for the next few months.
This train is rolling, and it's going to take a massive force to stop it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that wraps up the How the Force Works segment. Thank you so much to Meatloaf for asking that question. And if you want to ask a question, head over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Check it out.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, everybody knows what Sabine means, and that is that we're hopping into the HoloNet news segment. We got 3 stories today, the first of which, extremely topical, is Ahsoka Season 2. It's now being discussed at Lucasfilm, and I can't imagine that doesn't mean that next week they're going to go green light on Ahsoka Season 2. I looked at my Amazon Echo smart home thing today, and it said #1 show on Fire TV, Ahsoka. That's already a pretty good indication, and we had Disney release numbers about the premiere a few months ago, and they were very good. So
yeah, one thing about these shows, it's real easy to for us as big fans we're watching as soon as it comes out and yada yada, but these things exist on a streaming platform. Back Carter even remembers, he's not so old that if you missed that episode of Breaking Bad came out that week, or Thursday night or Friday night, whatever, you had to wait till next week to see it, or you had to stay up till 3 a.m. until it reran or something like that.
TiVo it.
TiVo it. Well, but even then, that didn't used to be a thing. You missed that episode?
I've never lived without DVR.
Okay.
I'll say that. Well, I mean, I have lived without it, but consciously, when I understood what a DVR was, I have always had one.
Right. But I, watching episodes of Star Trek back in the day, you missed that. You missed it. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. Back then, it was definitely you missed it.
And so, but now, you get to choose to whenever you want to watch this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you're not locked into. We're so blessed that if you got a subscription to Disney Plus and you're watching this, you're like, well, what is this Mortis Scott thing? You get to go watch it.
Right.
You don't have to wait for some rerun.
No.
Oh, well, they're only in season 2 of Rebels or Clone Wars, and I gotta wait till season 5.
Right.
That's TV Guide says that's a couple of months from now, so I'll tune in then.
Right.
Or maybe Billy has it. He recorded on tape because he likes it so much. So,
yeah. My fondest memories of Rebels, it may be one of the reasons that Rebels is my favorite Star Wars, is that I DVR'd it because I didn't have a TV in college. And so Rebels started when I was in high school, ended when I was in college. And so I would DVR it at my mom's house, and when I'd come back home to visit mom, I'd just lay on the couch and binge Rebels, like 8 episodes at a time.
Right.
And so it was just awesome. It was so much fun. But it was, I got to DVR it.
I mean, and Disney Plus has only been around since 2018, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Even before that, you had to have Netflix. Disney had this diaspora of what their programs were on, and you had to have a special subscription for something to even watch Rebels. Disney XCOM or something like that. I barely recall what it is. But the point is, we love these shows. We can watch them all at once, whenever we want, and there's so much going on in this Ahsoka show that we have to watch more.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So, Colin, our next news source is the New York Post, and the reason I chose this one is because I kind of took issue with the headline. The story is accurate, but the headline is kind of ridiculous. It says, Disney fans lament closure of Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser Hotel. The only thing I would not class myself as a Disney fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. And that's the first line of it says diehard Star Wars fans. I'm not lamenting the fact that the hotel closed. I'm lamenting the fact that it cost so much freaking money that I never got to experience it, and it closed before I got to experience it because it was exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah, it really was. I looked at me and my wife going, and it was $5,000 for 2 nights. I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I get a group of guys to go? And you walk up to some people and you say, hey, let's go have some fun, but it's going to be $1,800 each. And, we had to do some really cool stuff. And depending on perspective, I want my wife to be there because she's my wife. But she's not going to enjoy it as much as my friends do. So from my perspective, I've almost locked into going twice.
Right.
And so
she wouldn't let you not take her, though.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine, hey, me and my friends are going down to the Galactic Starcruiser to bunk up in a hotel room? I looked at this a lot. I really wanted to go. I had some circumstances in my personal life that, I just really wasn't worth the money. It really wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
And if it was, they undersold it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, everyone I heard that went had, and not just paid influencers, but people that spent their own money, had a wonderful time. They said it was great. But I never heard from anybody it was worth the money, just that the experience was one of a kind.
Right. And the fact is that this whole thing was, nobody's really ever tried something like this. I've been to some dinner theater thing where you pay less than $100 a meal to sit amongst a huge group of people while actors act out some play around you, and in some cases you interact, and it's a lot of fun. And so this seems like it's real akin to that because the actors were walking around and you got to interact with people who are in character or something like that. But, you know, you can't even compare the two. You know, a dinner theater is less than $100 a person. You know, this is a hotel experience that you're made to believe you're in space and you have encounters with the First Order and whatnot, and other actors and actresses depicting Rey and Kylo Ren and some other stuff. So, I mean, the experience was above board,
right?
But the barriers to entry were just too high.
Yeah, no, they absolutely were. I mean, and it's going to be hard to make money back on it. It's $400 million project, and so it I hate to say it, but it just sounded like it was gonna launch. It was a failure to launch, but I do understand, not to make excuses for Disney, but they built themselves into a corner. They couldn't lower the price. I saw a bunch of people who were like, lower the price. Well, you got full-time actors on staff, like you just mentioned. You've got these huge meals. You've got this giant experience. You've got this, you know, luxurious building, like all of this stuff. And so lowering the price would just mean they're not making money. They're not breaking even. They're under. They're going under. And so there's no point in lowering the price. It was cheaper for them to shut it down.
Right.
And if you're a company, that's just the decision you're going to make. I mean, as much as we love Star Wars and we're in it for the story and we don't care about the cost or whatever, well, they do. Disney's in it for money. And so, and not saying that's a bad thing. They're a company. That's why they exist, is to make money. And so if they're going to do that, there's just no good way for them to do it. But I'd love to see it repurposed. Mandalorian-themed hotel, all eras, doesn't have to be a canon story going on. It's just a hotel. I mean, it's like the Animal Hotel they have at Disney. I've never been to Disney, so any hardcore Disney goers here, I'm probably going to offend you by saying things like the Animal Hotel. But the Animal Hotel is just an animal-themed hotel. They can just do a Star Wars-themed hotel and not have all the trappings, and they can have cool Star Wars food, and you go pay for it at a restaurant in there, like a normal.
So they have resorts and different, like, themed resorts like New Orleans, Wilderness Lodge, and I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility to have a Star Wars themed resort, right? They'd have to expand this one a little better to have, because like every resort has a playground for kids, a swimming pool, stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know if this one did, but because they're selling an experience rather than a resort stay, right? And the fact is, like the Grand Floridian, if you price out a stay for a family of 4 for a week, it's $8,000. And that hotel is full all the time. Even at the Contemporary Resort, the one where the tram goes through it, you see in a lot of promotional pictures and stuff that's just outside of Magic Kingdom. If you try and even book rooms out a year in advance, it says not available on there. There's people who are staying at these fancy places more from a hotel perspective than an experience perspective, just because that's where they want to stay and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and I'd love to... I mean, look, the rooms still exist. They kind of look like Narkina 5 on the inside, but the rooms are Star Wars rooms. I would still like to stay in that room. Still like to go to the Star Wars gift shop there. You can have a room on the side where there's some laser tag thing. Oh, but it's, you know, the Battle of Hoth themed. And, like, there's cool things to do. You don't have to make it canon. You don't have to have all these actors on roll. Just make a regular hotel.
Right.
But I don't work at Disney. I'm not on the board, so they aren't going to take my advice, probably.
There's no... I mean, we haven't... That's another part of this. All we know is that it's closing. What the future aspirations are is pure speculation.
That's true. That's absolutely true. All right, so that we have one more news story. This one comes from Forbes, but it was all over the internet. Star Wars gaming creators are like the most on top of... They are on top of things more than people who follow movie news and TV show news. Like, the second this happened, they knew about it, and it's pretty crazy because it was just about a YouTube video coming down. But Sony took down their YouTube video about the trailer for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic's remake, leading a bunch of people to think that it's probably dead. Now, Sony was radio silent for, I believe, at least a day, if not longer. And then they came out and said, no, they lost the rights to the music, which it was Star Wars music, and they leased it from Disney. And so that means they're not keeping up on their contract with Disney for their music for their Star Wars video game. That is not like a lapse in judgment. That really leads me to believe this remake's not happening.
Yeah. So, how old were you in 2003?
5.
5 years old. So for me, unfortunately, I was literally in Iraq, and on this game came out originally July 16th, 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, because of my whole military stuff, I was so engrossed in that, I didn't watch TV, I didn't consume movies. Like, Part 3 of The Matrix came in, I saw that because it was such a big deal. Revenge of the Sith came out, and I saw that because it was such a big deal. But I was on the periphery of the cultural zeitgeist about this stuff when it came out because of the timeline in which it did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was there for Phantom Menace and Clone Wars and all the hype of that, but I missed out on Revenge of the Sith, and I missed out like the religious fervor that people follow this game with is something that baffles my mind because I just wasn't there. But I feel like there's a gap in my soul somewhere because of how passionate these folks are about this game.
Yep.
And I'm just like, cool, man.
You need to play it and stream it on our Twitch.
It.
Oh, okay. You have
it.
played it since.
It's
I thought you were saying you
fun
hadn't
game.
played it. Okay.
Yeah.
But you just weren't there at the... Obviously, I also wasn't there at the outset. I was 5.
But like I was, like I said, I wasn't part of the hype. I saw the reveals and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But if I had this culture to be part of at the time, it would have meant more to me. You know, being full candid, I can be a doofus sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't register. I have to sit there and feel the pulse of what's going on to get the full meaning and benefit of this stuff. And again, I wasn't part of that at the time. So shamefully, in a sense, I don't know the hype about this game. I'm sorry.
Right.
But really, I do. Revan is a badass.
Oh,
That's
everyone
so cool.
loves this game, and I understand why. You know, they ported it to the iPhone. Did you know that?
No.
That you can play it on your iPhone. I think it's $10.
Right.
And they failed a port to the Switch. They did it, but they didn't give all the right stuff. There's a lawsuit out about it actually now.
Well, and then something to deal with, like a patch, a fan-made patch.
That's what it was. They had promised they were going to do that, and then they didn't deliver.
Yeah,
and,
which totally augmented the gameplay to a highly favorable state that the Switch didn't get or something like that.
Right. And so, you know, it's a real big shame. This Forbes article says that, and he makes a great point. I'll definitely let you know who wrote this, because Paul Tossi, senior contributor at Forbes, said that classic video games do amazing, because they do. The Final Fantasy VII remake was huge. It was massive. People loved it. And so it's weird that this wasn't a priority at Sony for this remake to come out. It's like, this was gonna make money. I mean, if you release Battlefront 2 from 2005, it's gonna make cash. It doesn't matter what the game looks like. I know if they released it on Xbox right now for online multiplayer, those lobbies would be full. And so the same thing for KOTOR. It's like, they weren't going to lose money on the remake, so you just got to scratch your head and wonder, why is this the case? And, you know, you can sometimes look at the state of Star Wars movies and TV shows and get kind of depressed about how many of the projects have gotten canceled, but Star Wars video games are always worse off for some reason.
Yeah, I was watching another thing, just scrolling through the internet. The GoldenEye video game that came out for Nintendo 64 cost $2 million to make. What made it so popular was the multiplayer aspect to it that was almost an afterthought, not even approved by the creators of the game. The developers did it themselves on a whim. The game made $200 million.
Wow.
And this is 90s dollars.
Right.
You're talking about 1997. So it's an insane amount of money that these people made off of this game. And you're telling me when like the Jedi Survivor games that are hitting it out of the park, making all kinds of money, that this game that's so, like, the nostalgia factor that people wouldn't shell out $60 to $70 to $80 to $120 for a special edition. I mean, these people are sitting on a gold mine and they don't have the tools to mine it.
You're right. That's absolutely right. So it's a bummer. I mean, everyone's disappointed that we're not getting that remake. So it's a shame, and hopefully something will happen in the future. I mean, Disney's danced around doing anything in the era for so long. This was not going to be canon. The remake didn't make it canon. It was just remaking the game. But I'd love to see them dip their toe back into the Old Republic. It's time. I think that we've spent enough time, and I love the High Republic.
Yeah, especially with the High Republic.
Exactly. A lot of people say, the High Republic's a replacement for the Old Republic, and I kind of think that's a little true, that Disney has a lot of trepidation about jumping back in the Old Republic because it's so beloved. They don't want to screw it up, and I get it. I understand why. But they've got to go there eventually. You know, we saw the release of the new timeline, from the dawn of the Jedi era to the new Jedi Order era, and we've got that spot on there for the Old Republic, and the dawn of the Jedi and the new Jedi Order era, which those two eras are brand new. The only one also missing something is the Old Republic. It's the only one without anything in it. And so that's what I'd like to see, is get us a story right there.
And even if this project were to even be have a modicum of success, they can roll right into The Force Unleashed and make and remake that.
Now, I was around for the hype of that game. Yeah. I had that game on the Wii, loved it, except the Wii did not have the scene where he pulls the Star Destroyer out of space. It just wasn't in the game for some reason. And so my friends would talk about that, and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't know what you're saying about that.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. Force Unleashed, another cash cow they could remake.
Yes.
Easy. But the Force Unleashed is another one that I'd love to see. I'd like to see it fit back into the canon. I don't actually think it's possible. They would have to drastically change Galen Merrick as a character.
If they are able to make an Ahsoka show, leading it with the tagline, Heir to the Empire, and have all these hearkening callbacks to a beloved literary series, they can bring this back and be successful without it messing with canon.
That's true. You're right. Well, those are the news stories today, Colin, and they were all over the place, but we're happy to bring them to you. Star Wars news is always interesting to talk about. We're going to hop into our final segment for the podcast, and that is our Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, Star Wars moment of the week's where we share a moment from our personal lives where we did something with Star Wars today that was not Star Wars that week that was not the topic of the podcast. So, what is your Star Wars moment of the week this week?
Carter, I am in anticipation of the High Republic book that comes out in November. I am burning through the Phase 1, fixing to start Phase 2 of the High Republic book series. I am on, I finished Liar of the Jedi, the second book. Do you remember what it's called?
The Rising Storm.
Rising Storm. And I'm a really good bit of way through
The Fallen Star.
The Fallen Star, yeah. The title scroll. I'm looking at my screen, the title scrolled away. But I listen to them on audiobook because I drive a bunch, and or if I'm painting models at home or something like that. And I really like them because they're fully produced. They're narrated by Mark Thompson, and he is a real undervalued.
Our good friend Mark Thompson.
Gosh.
I mean, he did. We got to interview him.
Yeah.
He gave us a ton of insight about how that works.
And I haven't even listened to this. I'd listened to a few other books with him narrating, and I hadn't listened to this one. And gosh, I really wish I did, to give some more insight on these characters. And because, I mean, it's not like a few Jedi jump around doing this and that. I mean, it's the plight of the Jedi. It's how these evil characters are doing these really awesome things. I mean, you talk about compelling villains. Wow.
Right.
Really,
right.
wow. And it's a whole gang of them. It's not just one or two here and there doing mean, nasty things that have really galaxy-changing implications for how they affect and what they do.
Right.
And so do the Jedi, and how they respond to all this stuff is really cool. And it's not just the Jedi. There's simple heroes in this. There's a guy in the first book who comes up with the computer array to detect what is going on in the universe. And he's just a dude. And there's other instances of that throughout the second book and into the third book of like smugglers. And it really is essential Star Wars.
Right, it is.
And so this drought from the TV shows, if you're looking for something to do, we're going to dive headfirst into all this High Republic stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun reviewing all these books. Because I haven't come across a bad one. They might have some missteps or some personal preference of how I'd rather things have gone or done or whatever, like as far as story progression. But my goodness, man, tons of fun. I can't put it down.
I agree. We on our podcast, we try to bat for all Star Wars. We just don't hate Star Wars. We like everything. We find something we like in everything. And a second ago, we're talking about how much we want the KOTOR remake, Force Unleashed remake. We love the expanded universe. And now the High Republic stuff, which is brand new and being entered into the new canon, is just as good. I mean, it's all great, compelling storytelling. They're fun stories, man. I'm so happy that you've jumped into the High Republic because they brought me so much joy. I've loved reading these books. And I'm really excited for you to be caught up, so when we get through Phase 3, we'll be going through it together, because it's going to be worth talking about.
It really is.
I've read it. I've read Eye of Darkness, the first book of Phase 3, and it's worth reading. That's all I'll say.
I'm so pumped.
But my Star Wars moment of the week is also literary. I'm trying to chew through the whole canon now. I've gotten almost all the adult novels are done now. I've just started some of the young adult novels. This is not actually my moment of the week, actually, but Cassie and I are reading through the Padme series. We're listening through that together.
Oh, cool.
It's the young adult novels about Padme's life, and so that's been really cool. But my moment of the week is I just began the second book in the Alphabet Squadron series, Shadowfall. Follows New Republic pilots and Imperial pilots in that last year of the war after the Battle of Endor, and it's all about their lives. It's called Alphabet Squadron because there is a fighter from each letter. There's an X-Wing, a Y-Wing, an A-Wing, a B-Wing, and a U-Wing. And so getting to read these books, getting to see these books, and getting to hop in the cockpit with these guys, they're some of the grittiest Star Wars books in the new canon. I mean, there's grittier ones in the expanded universe, but I would struggle to find a grittier story in the canon so far where they are really deep in the cockpit, like I'm saying. I mean, it's about the day-to-day military operations of the New Republic and the Empire at the time. And it's a lot of high-stakes flying and a lot of high-stakes action, a lot of espionage. If you're a big fan of piloting, dogfights, any of that aspect of Star Wars, you've got to pick these books up. They're like the spiritual successor to the X-Wing series in the expanded universe, and they're really, really good. And so I'm on the second one right now. Loved the first one, and like I said, I'm chewing through it pretty quickly.
That's good. I can't wait to pick those up.
Yeah, they're totally worth it. You got to read them. But that wraps up our Star Wars moment of the week, and subsequently that wraps up the podcast for this week. Man, I'm going to miss Ahsoka. It's been fun. It's been good getting together every week for this one.
Tuesday's going to come around next week, and I'm just going to be lost. I'm going to be the zombie shambling up the stairs.
Right. I know it's been super cool. I can't wait to see where it heads. Next week we are going to have a ton of speculation. Whole episodes dedicated to it. I've already got multiple pages of notes written. I guarantee you. I'm
chomping at the bit for that.
I'm going to be writing way more. I can't wait, man. It's going to be good. I wanted to do it this episode, but we're already sitting at 3 hours. And
no.
if we had packed the speculation
it'd be another
into this,
hour.
I think it'd be our first 5-hour podcast. Yeah. And so we're going to save it for next week. So we hope you guys will join us again next week to hear that speculation. And until then, you can engage with Colin and I in so many ways. We are all over social media. We're on Instagram at starwars.station. We've got a growing Instagram page where we post memes and lots of insights on our story. You can see all kinds of stuff of our day-to-day Star Wars lives on our story. I'm on Twitter, or we're both on Twitter, SW_station. We just fling hot takes at the wall on there. It's a lot of fun, so go check out our Twitter. We are on Twitch, as I mentioned earlier. We need to get some streaming video games on there. I've been streaming Battlefront 2 on there a little bit, so go check us out on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/station media. Mm-hmm. We're also on Facebook. Colin, where can they find us on Facebook? And how else can they get a hold of us? Because there's 2 great growing communities we've got here.
Yeah, there's a Facebook Star Wars Station, and then you further deeper into that is Star Wars Station Cantina.
That is our Facebook group.
Discord. Go to Instagram and follow the link tree. Pretty much have to have the invite for that.
Well, and it's also in the podcast bio, so you can check it out there.
And that Discord is popping. We got lots of fun discussion over there. What else is there?
We've got, our number one place that you can support us, that we appreciate so much every time, is if you head to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and check us out there, because we've got a lot of content there. We have an RPG podcast. We just wrapped up a new episode of that. It'll be dropping very soon. Colin and I recently recorded a new episode of our other podcast, ARC Troopers, which is only available on Patreon, and it's a lot of fun doing ARC Troopers.
This most previous one was about basically the last 3 episodes of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, leading up to that famous hallway scene with Luke Skywalker and everything involved in that.
Yeah.
And those are such impactful episodes for Mandalorian, but Star Wars as a whole. There's stuff that happened in that leads to what we talked about today.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. We have a great time recording those ARC Troopers episodes because we weren't making the podcast when that show was coming out, when Season 2 is coming out. And I did an arc about Rebels. We certainly weren't making the podcast then. And so it gives Colin and I an opportunity to go back and talk about the best of the best Star Wars. And it's a pretty laid-back format. I mean, It's a lot more like a phone call conversation between the two of us. And so go check out that at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. We've also got some brand new stickers that we're going to be unveiling for sale very soon. That'll be all over our social media. You guys can check that out. We're really excited about those.
Yep. We're going to be cranking those out and a lot more designs. We got some really fun ideas, and we hope that you're there helping grow with that on us so we can evolve those and make them into shirts or whatever you think. Also, what was that phone number to leave a voice message?
Yeah, I'll remind you guys of that voicemail one more time. That phone number is 806-318-8903.
Yeah, I'm so interested to hear what y'all have to say about anything on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the interaction, guys. That's why we push you to the Discord. That's why we push you to the Instagram. It's not for follows. We really don't care about that. What we care about is being able to talk Star Wars with our friends, and you guys are our friends. We love talking Star Wars with folks. We love talking Star Wars with you. So please reach out to us. Use that voicemail hotline. Use the Discord. Use the Instagram. And please, if you enjoy our content, you enjoy this show, go to Spotify, go to Apple, leave us a 5-star review, write a review. We love it. We appreciate it. It helps us grow, and it helps us get exposed to more and more listeners. The more that you guys review, the higher we go in the charts, and it helps us continue to grow this project and continue to grow this community that we love having.
Yep. Really is the best.
So, guys, we appreciate you listening, and that's going to be it for Colin and I this week. We'll be back next week with our Ahsoka Season 2 speculations, with our Mandoverse movie speculations, and with our speculations beyond that, because like we said, this Ahsoka season left a lot on the table.
It really did.
We're
so
excited
fun
to talk about it. So until next week, you guys all stay wizard.